we're 2:15 and it's been here too much.
I know. I agree. Yeah.
Sir, there's no That's fantastic. I was like, all right, sir. So it was really they would know these history. I popped it all up into the foil. And then I kept it on the ground. It popped up against
fires. So like he's had a really hard go of it. So part of me thought he's really gonna milk that out. This is that was super good. But I don't know, it's just and it also just with the way council does. So I feel like
he was probably after the other guy. This is what the hall was. There was some guy. He was there for like a couple of months. I forgot what his name is.
well then we need to be able to do that.
I don't know if I got laid off. The LA Times is managing over there. It does move.
Oh, well, yeah, this would be definitely paper.
You know, we're gonna go crash it.
Only one? What? Okay. Keep this close. You guys left out Dallas. Dallas. Only one.
Do you help if I'm taking it out?
What? 2 easels now. It was pretty neat.
I did not see something like what was coming in, so I was like,
So true though.
Oh, I love it. I have that same mic.
I gotta watch all the rules.
That's awesome though. No, that one's great. We have one just like that.
Because last week my mic fully snapped.
Oh, shit. Just decapitated. Wow. You look mad.
Thank God I had a 10-minute walk.
It's like, I need to cool down.
Okay, I'll see you there. And then walk. You know.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah. It was like embarrassing how much the walk actually cost.
No, they usually, it usually does good. Everybody needs to be, you know?
One was like,
Yeah.
Well, technically, yeah.
oh, actually, it's fun.
And then we went and we were right afterwards. That's the biggest stuff. Yes. Yes, yes. So go in.
How are you doing this morning?
And then,
Good, how are you?
I'm well. I'm Nick.
Nick, I'm Sam. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm over at Cronkite News,
Oh, cool, all right.
Arizona State University.
Do you know, we had an intern
Yeah?
about a year ago. Her name was Lauren.
That sounds really familiar.
Yeah, she was there. I think she was our intern last summer, but she was fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear.
And we have ABC 15 in Phoenix, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Very nice.
We were all over the grill stuff yesterday.
Right.
The
That,
lawsuit and everything.
yeah, that came just full swing.
Yeah.
Several days after she first started on that. So, yeah.
How long have you been here reporting on the film?
I have just been here since the end of August, so only a couple months.
Right, so you're getting the taste of the shutdown.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm hoping he calls on me here.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. He likes to switch it up, but he remembers like who he calls on, so it's like he hasn't called on someone before.
Okay.
He'll do it.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
How long have you been reporting on film for, Sam?
Gosh, since 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been a while.
What's kept you here?
Honestly, I would say that's probably it. It's like my first few months from the impeach Trump. So like, yeah, the minute that happened, I was like, all right, there's a lot going on here. So it was, yeah,
Never a dull moment.
never. There's always something like super exciting here, which is crazy. Just growing up, Congress was like the way that I would see it on the news. There were intense moments, but nothing like this. But it's been really cool. Did you dream of like becoming a worker in DC the whole time?
I think so, but definitely later on. I want to go back to Arizona and do some more local reporting there.
That's
But
the move.
yeah, we write everything with an Arizona angle here at the Cronkite News Washington Bureau. But
Yeah.
I'm originally from the Chicagoland area. I wanted to go to a state that was completely different that I didn't know anybody in.
Yeah.
So I chose Arizona, and I feel like I've just become so well versed in what's happening. And it's one of those key battleground states.
Oh, it is.
It goes for Biden in 2020, and it goes for Trump in 2024. Just an instantaneous flip. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's the right place to go next.
Well, we got a station there, and we got a lot of markets that are around there too. So we got plenty of good opportunities. Being a state house reporter, they're probably amazing.
I think so. I'm confident on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. You would have a card, would you say?
I do actually. It's in my bag. But after, if you follow me to the to like the little press gallery, I can get your card.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
I would love to stay in touch.
Yeah. I won't take you away from what you're doing here.
Oh, you're good. We use the service instead of different roles. So we have like one of us, and then there's going to be Jeffrey's here at 11.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all sorts of news that's going on today. And I work, so we go live usually once every hour, starting at like 11 or noon for my reporter. So it's all about like gathering like right now, and then it's out there, and then we go out and do work out. There might be like a break in between, but then we just continue to take.
I could only imagine. I mean,
It's
it's
just
just
go,
a
go, go.
ginormous operation.
It's just go, go, go. It's a big operation, but it's responsible. So it's like trying to do as much as we possibly can.
Sure.
But we make it work, I think. It's a lot of fun. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't been down in Capitol Hill too much, but just like chasing people down, the stakeouts, that's a fun time.
I mean, the teams that like a lot of these bigger networks have, or like there's big teams that cover the House, big teams that cover the Senate. That's like, you need those networks. It's no other way to cover the bases because you might miss something that's super key. It's like, oh, I wasn't in that hallway at this time.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Did you end up going to J school?
I went to Nika.
Okay.
I went to Rayburn Room, but I didn't. I did their like college television as an extracurricular, and I really liked it. So I got a degree in communication while doing like journalism on the side.
Yeah. That's the move.
It was definitely right. So I went in as a film major originally, and I was like, I can't do film.
Maybe one day though.
Let's do it.
Do a little documentary, you know?
Yeah, would love to.
That'd be good.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. Switch it up a little bit. Are you also doing J school?
I am.
Did you start out that way, or did you like?
I did. This is, towards the end of high school, it was like somebody jumped head first in journalism. I love storytelling. I love just having conversations like this.
Oh, I think that's good.
You know, that's my idea of fun.
Yeah.
So,
That's great, man.
so yeah, I'm at the Cronkite School at ASU.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Are you a junior?
I'm a senior. It's my final semester, so I graduate in December.
Nice, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a way to sign off.
I know. It's good.
And then for like your project, you have to do like a big end of year thesis, or do you have to do some stories as a portfolio you have to meet?
You know, there really isn't. I think everybody, including myself, is just trying to get as much of their byline out there as possible.
Okay.
And we have all kinds of like partner organizations that can pick up our stories, like Arizona outlets that might be interested in what we report on. So it just operates like a newsroom. And yeah, it's just a matter of what you can create by the end of the 16 weeks that you're here.
Nice. So it's just what you make it move. That's
Yeah.
really cool. That's also really challenging too.
It can be difficult. It's been fun though, also exhausting, but this stuff excites me. So
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. That's so cool.
Hello, Corinne.
Good morning.
I wish we had the program like that at least.
I think I have a feeling Sam, you'll go back, you'll install it, you'll create it, call it Sam School of Communication. It'll be good. I can see it.
School of Reality.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, at least in the seat studio, which is perfect for television. That's all the sound it did. So many people don't use it, it's like, it's you guys.
Along.
What's up, buddy?
Easier for capital spaces, TV, like yeah, like set up. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, we're very conscientious.
So yeah.
So like, you can see better, obviously, too. Lauren, can I ask you to give this to John? Yeah. It's for a makeup artist's son who did his makeup on Sunday. It's like a journey, but I was like, I'm just going to give it to my little ABC friends to get it back to the zero to get it for her son.
I love
Her
this.
son is
Oh my god.
Wow.
Yes, and all the,
So he gets
all to
challenged.
end with collects challenge credits.
I know you've been here since 2019, but it's every challenge for you to actually identify one of the filmmakers in person, even though you know exactly what they look like online.
Oh yeah.
Great.
I was
Huge
draw one.
disparity.
It happens sometimes, and especially once midterms happen, or like a presidential election, there's like a swing up. I'm like, I spent all that time to get the thing down.
Yeah.
You gotta start over again. Senators is much easier. But it's like 100 of them. But the House, yeah, really challenging. You can't.
We'll never
Never
love
like
it.
any senators, that stuff.
No, yeah, come on.
That's the big question our president always asks. He's like, are they on so-and-so committee? I'm like, maybe.
You tell me.
Yeah, maybe.
Is it the green pin that they have? That you can always identify that's a member of Congress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then depending on like what year they came in, it's a different color. Yeah, sometimes they want to keep the pins that they got when they were freshmen, and then other times they just get the new pin. So,
But it's always circular, the same sigil.
same thing with senators, they have a different that's the deal.
Because I always see people with pins, I'm like, I don't know, man, I don't know if that's a
It's like very confusing sometimes.
Right. Allison. Yes, you too. How about you?
I'm sure you know that, but I think you would know. And usually she's the first guest. He said he wanted to do it around the wild. He was saying
She do like the in-game broadcast.
she has like these inside.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So she did that. I think she did that. Watch.
She said, yeah.
I heard about that flip them over today, but I'm like, I do want to go to the
We did, yeah. Yeah.
When did you talk to her about that?
Jill paid 50. Before I left. 60. How old is that? They actually did last night. I actually figured out just let me know.
There's kind of a lot going on tonight, so I don't know if we have time to get it done. We said we were going to air it at 1 o'clock today.
But yeah, they did it. They did on the schmear.
Yeah.
I do,
Just trying to-
really something.
So I would call it.
It's already. And, thank you.
Yeah. Clarify, I guess, for him what he wants to say. Allison said he said today, she told me tomorrow.
She has the job that we've all been finding for her all our life.
Everyone's in the green room.
It's all, which we have suffered through. Look, I have to get the course. Bring the break. Throwing back up with them. This problem.
You're good.
Yeah, I told Andy. Very nice way
Is there a repudiation of the?
Yeah, I think there was conversation on this stuff. Yeah, that's
I like it, but I never predict where maybe you kind of look up that house. That kind of thing, he shares this close to this line.
He'll look over there.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 22 of the Democrat shutdown. While it's already been, as we noted yesterday, the longest full government shutdown in history, October 22nd marks another landmark. This is now the second longest government shutdown of any kind ever in the history of our country, and it's just shameful. Democrats keep making history, but they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. The contrast is the split screen, and I've referenced that at this podium a few times already, but I just think it's an important thing to point out, because that contrast between the two parties grows more glaring with each passing day, and you can look at all the evidence for yourself. There is, of course, a literal split screen every day. You've got Republicans and Democrats out all over the airwaves, burning them up, speaking directly to the American people, but you'll note that there's a key difference between the messages of the two sides. The Republicans are all repeating the same simple truth, and that is why that message is resonating with the American people, and that's what the polling indicates. At the same time, on the other side, the Democrats are doing their very best to obscure and create distractions from that simple truth. So the reason that we find it important to come out here every day and repeat again the same simple truth is because they're trying so hard to cover that up. But there's also a figurative split screen. There's a literal one, but it's figurative as well. And I just wanted to spend a moment this morning and talk with you about that. On one side, you have the Republican Party, the party that controls the White House, the Senate, and the House. We call that unified government. It's the party that won the popular vote in every single swing state and made deep inroads with voters new to the Republican base. And we received that mandate gratefully, and we went immediately to work. So since the election in November, just in the last 9.5 months of this Congress, which began in January, Republicans have delivered incredible results for the American people. And we could stand up here and spend an hour going through just the bullet points and highlights of all that, but we put a few on the handy chart over here. But just think of what's been accomplished in the last 9.5 months. A couple of things listed here. We passed the historic working families tax cut, one of the most landmark pieces of legislation ever passed by the U.S. Congress for the benefit of the American people. We slashed taxes for hardworking Americans, geared for the lower and middle class earners who needed that assistance. We cut hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud, waste, and abuse from government. We solved the border crisis. We are working now to solve the crime crisis in major cities around America. We strengthened Medicaid. We improved health care access, and we lowered premiums with our legislation. We have restored peace through strength, thanks be to God, and we are ending wars around the globe. And we've restored common sense to a government that sorely needed it. That's part of the mandate that was given to us by the American people in the fall. And most recently, we did our jobs, and we passed a clean, nonpartisan CR to keep the government open for the people. Now look on the other side of that figurative split screen as demonstrated here. The lights are out. It's all dark. Why? Because what the Democrats have accomplished in 9.5 months is a government shutdown. A couple other things sort of related to that. You know, they have made a lot of TikTok videos. We give them credit for that. They've also assaulted law enforcement officers. One of them's on trial for that. They've openly embraced and rallied with communists and socialists, most recently across the country on Saturday. They voted to raise taxes on millions of hardworking Americans at the worst possible time. They have voted against reducing fraud, waste, and abuse in government, and they have now voted, collectively, Democrats in Congress have voted 12 times to keep the government closed down. But it doesn't stop there. The Democrat shutdown is a glaring example of just how far the Democratic Party has strayed from common sense. Remember the simple truth here. It was over a month ago now that we passed the Republicans passed the clean, short-term, continuing resolution. It's nonpartisan. No gimmicks, no tricks, no riders, no partisan Republican policy priorities added to that. It's 24 pages in length, as we've discussed so many times, and it is very, very simple. Why? Because it was a very simple good faith effort on our part to preserve our ability to keep negotiating on the full-year funding bills and, of course, the other big issues facing the American people. So we wanted to keep the lights on. But what did the Democrats do? Instead of receiving that, voting for it, as they have always done in the past, they broke from history, and they rejected that. And they offered a counterproposal. Ours was a clean CR. We call theirs a dirty CR, and you all know why. Because they added $1.5 trillion in new spending that would be a mandate, including hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars for health care for illegal aliens. Go to page 57, section 2141 of what they filed. They want to restore funding for left-wing pet projects in foreign countries. And I've given you a list of some of the crazy things that they would include in that. $500 million for liberal news outlets like NPR and PBS on the backs of taxpayers, and the removal, remember, they wanted to eliminate the $50 billion that Republicans got signed into law by President Trump on July 4th to prop up our rural hospitals. And here's the kicker. The Democrats can't even agree on what they want right now. If you polled congressional Democrats on what it would take to reopen the government, you would not get a uniform answer. Every reporter in the room, by the way, should be asking them that question. Democrats put together this haphazard grab bag of crazy leftist policy proposals when they knew that it would not be agreed upon, and they knew that it was clear. that Republicans were working to do the responsible thing and offer a clean CR to fund the government. That's our most basic job here. In their desperation now, they're trying their very best to somehow blame Republicans for the forthcoming health care crisis that they themselves created, by way of just very quick review, for the record, because they're trying to obscure this as well. Let's remember the true origins of the boondoggle that is American health care under Obamacare. Democrats wrote that bill. They passed it into law without a single Republican vote. During the COVID pandemic, Democrats created temporary Obamacare credits, again, without a single Republican vote. Democrats then voted to extend those credits. They set the expiration date on it. And then when they held the majority in the Senate, it was Democrats who chose not to extend those credits beyond this year. Now, as we approach their own self-imposed expiration date, now they are breathlessly insisting to you, and on all the interviews, that somehow it's a Republican crisis. Give me a break. The facts are the facts. We are up here saying, sharing the simple facts and truth. And as John Adams said, facts are stubborn things. Democrats are the ones who manufactured this entire situation without a single Republican vote, and now, when the chickens are coming back home to roost, they're trying to blame the other team. It is utter nonsense, and you should call them on it. That's the job of the press, and continue to do that every single time. Clearly, this is a complicated issue, this whole healthcare subsidy thing, and there's hundreds of different views on it, as I've explained. So Republicans cannot and will not solve it in a backroom deal. Chuck Schumer has been suggesting that 4 leaders should go into a smoke-filled back room like they used to do in the old days and create this solution. It's not a possible thing to do. It was never appropriate. It's not possible to put on a continuing resolution because it's such a complex issue. Issues of this magnitude deserve deep thought and deliberation. That's how this system works here. And as soon as Chuck Schumer reopens the government, all of our members will have an opportunity to engage in the very important discussion of how to make Obamacare affordable. But we won't engage in Democrats' hostage taking, nor will we pay a ransom. We certainly won't engage in their unserious proposals as long as Democrats continue to act like unserious lawmakers. I'm just going to say this morning, enough is enough. And with us today with the leadership team are 2 leaders in Congress. One is Chairman Bruce Westerman of the Committee on Natural Resources. And we also have with us Congressman Mike Simpson, who's our lead appropriator for the Department of the Interior, which funds and oversees our beautiful national parks. Both are here today to share an update on how this shutdown impacts all those operations, but I'll note, as I bring Chairman Westerman up first, that when President Obama shut down the national parks, the National Mall in 2013, it was a real hardship for the American people, and the Trump administration is trying to handle this differently. They've gone to great lengths as much as they can to protect Americans' access to our national parks, while Democrats continue to hold government funding hostage. They'll have more to share on that, the experts on the subject, and I'm happy to bring them up now. Thank both these gentlemen for their hard work. I'll turn it over to Chairman Westerman. Yeah, bud.
Thank you, Speaker, and good morning, everyone. First off, I want to say thank you to the thousands of federal employees across the country that are still in the field, going to work every day, oftentimes without pay, to do their jobs to steward and protect our public lands, from Park Service to Forest Service Rangers to Fish and Wildlife officers and all the other management and support staff doing their jobs in uncertain times. Thank you. Leadership starts at the top, and I commend President Trump, Secretary Burgum, and Secretary Rollins for the job that they've done and for their leadership in keeping our public lands open to the public. It's not always been that way during shutdowns, as the Speaker mentioned. But this can't continue indefinitely. Despite all the extraordinary efforts being made, at some point, without funding, the public lands will not be accessible to the public. The longer this unnecessary shutdown lasts, the more negative consequences that we'll start to see. Without regular staffing, litter will pile up and park ecosystems will be affected. It's fall time. It's a wonderful time of the year. It's a wonderful time to visit our public lands with crisp weather and beautiful foliage. Fall, personally, is my favorite time of the year, and it's that way for many Americans who enjoy being outdoors. When Americans save up to visit a national park or a national forest, That experience should exceed their expectations. Families visiting our parks are now being met with disappointment as visitor services and experiences are reduced. As the shutdown drags on, families will cancel their vacations or day trips to our public lands. It's hunting season all across the country, different types of hunting seasons across the country. And public lands are oftentimes the only place that people who like to hunt and fish have to recreate. For everyone's sake, and who uses and appreciates our public lands and appreciates our public employees, it's time to end the shutdown. You know, as we look here in Washington, the negative effects of the shutdown and what that will have on public lands, I just want to highlight one issue, and that's the Great American Outdoors Act. This was a bipartisan bill that was signed into law by President Trump during his first term. It's something that there's a lot of bipartisan support to work on right now. But, you know, tomorrow we had planned a field hearing on the Great American Outdoors Act so that we could reauthorize this piece of legislation that's putting as much as $1.9 billion a year into maintenance backlog on our federal lands. I've had an opportunity to visit many of these parks and to see the wonderful work that's being done. It's something that Republicans, Democrats, and independents, I think, all appreciate the fact that we're taking care of our public lands. But Congress is not here working on those issues because of the shutdown. And we need to get back to work. We need to start putting the American people first and putting these federal lands and giving them the place and the position that they deserve. And we simply can't do that when the government is shut down. So enough of the shutdown. Let's get it over, get people where they're paid, where they're going out and doing their jobs that they want to do, and getting America back in the position we need to be in and getting Congress back and functioning. And with that, I'll turn it over to my friend Mike Simpson from the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, and thanks to the leadership for inviting Chairman Westerman and I here to talk a little bit about the impact that this shutdown is having on our public lands and our national parks. I couldn't agree more with House leadership, their position on this shutdown. House Republicans, as you are well aware, did not shut the government down. We voted to open the government and not shut it down. It's the House Democrats that and the Senate Democrats that are voting to shut the government down and keep it shut. We gave them exactly what they wanted. We gave them a clean CR, no gimmicks, no policy riders, short term. There were people who wanted this to go on until January or February. They wanted a short term. That's exactly what they got. And then surprisingly, they reversed themselves and voted against it. This shutdown is causing and potentially causing even more damage for the American people. While the Democrats in their press conferences say how much they care about the American people, that they're fighting for the American people, when you look at the impacts of what they're doing, clearly the evidence is the reverse of that. They don't really care about the American people. What they care about is keeping their leadership positions, and that's exactly what's happening. They say that they care about federal employees. The fact that we have furloughed federal employees that aren't getting paid, clearly the evidence shows that they don't really care about federal employees. This is about two leaders trying to keep their jobs, and that's unfortunate. You know, our national parks are our historic treasures. Ken Bird's called them America's best idea. The Park Service goes to great lengths to protect our resources, and the Park Police provide critical safety measures for our visitors in our national parks. Under the Democrats' shutdown, the lack of funding for staff and maintenance projects could cause irreparable damage to these national parks. Some people say, well, it's the end of the year. Most of the national parks are visited during the summer. Last year, we had 331 million people visit our national parks. They are truly America's best idea, in my view. In October of last year, we had 28 million people visit our national parks. 28 million in just October. I agree with Chairman Westerman. I think it's the best time of year to visit our national parks, with the colors changing, warm days, cool nights, all that kind of stuff. I love Yellowstone in October, and actually in November when you get there and you see the first snowfall and a few things like that. It's a great time to visit our national parks. But we have families who have been planning to visit our national parks for years sometimes. putting aside the resources, that are now canceling their visit to our national parks because of this shutdown and the impact that it could potentially have on their vacations. Unfortunately, that's very damaging. We know many people who are canceling their trips. But this administration is trying to keep the national parks open. Unlike the Obama administration when there was a shutdown, they actually put tape around the open air monument, the World War II monument, so that people that came in, veterans that came in to see it, couldn't visit the open air monument. They tried to make it as painful as possible. This administration is trying to do just the reverse. They're trying to keep the parks open, they're trying to keep our public lands open, and trying to make it as least painful as possible. But it's going to get more and more painful as time goes on. I applaud this administration for their efforts to mitigate the impacts that this is going to have on our national parks. As I said, 28 million Americans visit our national parks in October, 24 million in November. So they're used all year long, whether it's just the great parks out in the west, Yellowstone and Glacier and Yosemite and Grand Canyon, or whether it's the Everglades in Florida or Arcadia in Maine. These national parks are a treasure to America, and our Americans love them. There's one other thing I would like to say. You've all heard us as appropriators, and actually as all Republicans have said, we need to get back to regular order. You all know what that means. What it means for those listening is that we pass bills, individual bills, we bring them to the floor, we go through the amendment process, we go to conference, and then we bring a conference report back between us and the Senate. This leadership team, we haven't done that for about 15 to 20 years. This leadership team that you see behind me has moved us in that direction more than any team I've seen ever. We are actually ready to go to conference with 3 bills right now that have passed the House. The Speaker plans on bringing, and the Majority Leader plan on bringing up the rest of the appropriation bills and trying to get back to regular order. You can't do that overnight. It takes some time. But they have moved us in that direction, and we will get back to doing it the way that it should be done, where we do individual bills, we conference them with the Senate, we bring them back to pass them. So I applaud this leadership team and the efforts that they're making, but we can't do it while the government is shut down. We need to open this government back up, and yes, there are many other issues that need to be debated and worked on. We can't work on those. As Westerman said, Chairman Westerman, can't have hearings and that type of stuff when we're shut down. So we need to change that. We need to open this government back up, get rid of this stupid Schumer shutdown, the 3 S's, I guess, and let us do our job. That's why we're here. I get a kick out of listening to the press conference from some of my senators saying, well, the House has been on vacation for a month. This is not what I call a vacation. If they think showing up once a day and casting 1 vote is work, they need to come over to the House side and see what we're doing. We're working with our constituents, we're out talking to people, and we're back in Washington doing our job too. So we'll continue to do our job, end this stupid Schumer shutdown, and let us do our job. And now I'd turn it over to the great Majority Leader of the House, Steve Scalise. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman Simpson. Preach it. Appreciate as well Chairman Westerman and the work that these great chairmen continue to do to try to keep government functioning as best as possible in the midst of very difficult circumstances that Democrats themselves created. I do think it's important, as we're at this point, that we look back over the last 9 months and really look at the difference between the 2 parties in Washington. And Speaker Johnson laid a lot of this out. You can see the poster. But just think about what happens every day here. Republicans wake up every day working with President Trump to try to get this country moving forward, to address and fix problems that frankly were created by Democrats. And what does the Democrat Party do every single day? Every day they wake up and just see what President Trump is doing and find a way to oppose it. Doesn't matter what he wants to do. President Trump came into office day 1, said he's going to secure America's border, was actually elected on it overwhelmingly. 80% of the American people agreed with President Trump and House and Senate Republicans who said that should be a priority. And we actually set course to do that, and we have done just that, secured America's border. And what did Democrats do every step of the way? They said no. They voted no to secure the border. President Trump said, we're going to try to get our economy back on track. We're going to stabilize the tax code so that no American family has a tax increase. Every American family was facing, on most cases, a 30+% tax increase. President Trump said no family deserves that. Let's stabilize the tax code and have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, so blue-collar workers can actually have more money in their pockets and empower them to do more for their families. President Trump said that. We agreed. What did every Democrat in Washington say? No. They didn't just say no. They all voted no to that. President Trump said we ought to produce more energy in America. Chairman Westerman was at the heart of a lot of those policies. You actually had to change policy to do it. So Congress and President Trump worked together to lower prices at the pump. Every American family today is benefiting from those great policies because they're paying less when they fill up their car every single day. And you would think, gee whiz, that would be a good area where all people in Washington, Republicans and Democrats, come together. But because President Trump said yes, what did every Democrat say? No. Every Democrat voted no to lower your energy costs, just because President Trump said he was going to do it. President Trump also said, I'm going to do something that no president in decades had done, and that is modernize our air traffic control system. It seemed like at least once a month at some airport in America, big, medium, small, there was a near miss where an airplane almost ran into another airplane. In some cases, did tap or run into another airplane. And it was happening because our air traffic control system is still based on 1980s technology. I was actually a student of computer science and learned how to program computers in the 1980s when we had floppy drive disks. You have to Google what that is today because we don't even have them anymore, except where? At all of our major airports across America. LaGuardia running on floppy disks from the 1980s. And President Trump said, we ought to do something about that. We ought to fix it. How about we modernize our air traffic control system? Now, this isn't a new idea. You would say, well, gee whiz, why wasn't that done in the 90s, in the 2000s? For goodness sake, the computing technology on this iPhone is more modern and capability and competently technologically advanced than what a lot of our air traffic control systems are using, except it cost money. It cost billions of dollars. And so previous presidents, Republican and Democrat alike, just didn't have the time or the priority to find the money to go modernize that system. And so some days flights across America would get canceled. It was happening over and over again, at least once a month, anywhere in America, disrupting the lives of American families who just kind of figured, I guess that's just the way it is because government's in charge. Well, Donald Trump said, all right, we're going to change things because that's what Donald Trump does. He finds a problem and he works to fix them. And again, you would think everybody would come together and say yes, except because Donald Trump said it, every Democrat had to say no. And in fact, when we put it in the bill, every Democrat voted no against modernizing our air traffic control system, just because it was Donald Trump's idea. This is a sick and twisted and lost, rudderless ship of a political party. That's who we're dealing with. When the press asks, gee whiz, is there something else you can offer these folks in a negotiation to try to get this off a ramp and find a better way to get the government open? The speaker's told you over and over again, there's something we could negotiate with, but when the party is so rudderless and morally bankrupt that just because President Trump has an idea, the Democrat Party's visceral reaction is just to say no. Right now, he's actually renovating the White House, building a new ballroom. I mean, anybody that's ever been to a state dinner, like the White House has been renovated over and over again. There wouldn't be an Oval Office if there weren't renovations by previous presidents. The West Wing was a renovation by previous presidents to make it better for all future presidents. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. He won't enjoy most of the time of that, but future presidents will, Because in the future, when you have a state dinner, when we bring world leaders in, which we do all the time, and you host a president of a foreign country, a prime minister, I've been to some of those, some of you have covered them. Where do you go? You walk outside of the White House in the rain sometimes to go to a tent, to host a world leader. That's what we do today, and President Trump said that's a disgrace. How about we do better? And not only did he say we were going to build a great ballroom that we can host these events, he funded it privately. He put up some of his own money, and you would think, well, gee whiz, at least they can agree to that. It's not even taxpayer money. It's going to be a permanent renovation that'll enhance the White House for all future presidents. What does every Democrat say? They say no to that. They say no to everything he does because they just are angry about the results of the election from last year. They're upset with the American people because the American people said we want somebody who's going to wake up every day and say, how can I solve Middle East peace? I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm not going to take the old failed ways of doing it for an answer. I'm going to figure out a way to go do it, and he does. How do I work to help improve the lives of Americans? He goes and finds a way to say yes, and because he says yes, Democrats find a way to say no. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace, but now it's having real impacts on American families. With this shutdown, it's not just their everyday feud with Donald Trump. It's become now a problem where American families are paying the price. Let's talk about what just came out a couple of days ago. The USDA sent a letter to all of the states saying, quote, if the current lapse in appropriations continues, there will be insufficient funds to pay full November SNAP benefits for approximately 42 million individuals across the nation. 42 million people across America are going to suffer from those SNAP benefits that they count on right before Thanksgiving because Chuck Schumer and Democrats are so angry with President Trump that they just want to find a way to say no. And when they say no, now they're saying no to 42 million families who will go without food so that Democrats can show their far left radical base that they're fighting President Trump. As if they've got to show off to some radicals who come march on the mall and hold up effigies to murder the president, 8647. You saw the signs. Over 800,000 people in my home state of Louisiana get food benefits through the SNAP program. Yesterday we talked about Senator Ossoff, who one Senate aide said on the record to The Hill in that article, said that he's more afraid of if he votes to open the government, he will lose the clicks he's getting from foreign states and the small donor donations that add to about $3 million. That's what he's afraid of. Well, let's look at Senator Ossoff's state of Georgia. 1.4 million people are going to face losing SNAP benefits just in his home state. Now, does he want each of them to send about $2 each to him to make up for the $3 million he's getting from California, in Illinois, in New York, in Minnesota? Is that what it's going to take? Because he's causing pain on people in his home state by voting no. Maybe he needs to go on vacation instead of showing up every day, as Senator Simpson said, showing up to vote no to inflict pain on 1.4 million people in the state of Georgia. That's what he's doing. So this is having real impacts on real families. We're here working, and the House has passed the bill, despite 99% of Democrats voting no. Again, President Trump said yes, they say no, doesn't matter what the issue is. And the American people are sick and tired of it because now it's affecting them. Over 40 million low-income Americans are the ones who qualify for SNAP benefits. They're going to be denied food starting in November, according to USDA, because these guys just want to show their far-left radical base that they hate President Trump. It's disgusting, and it's having a devastating impact on millions and millions of Americans across the country. Our whip, Tom Emmer.
Well, Democrats have voted 12 times to shut the government down. 12 times. And now they're refusing to support legislation that would help alleviate some of the pain they've inflicted on the American people as a result. Earlier this week, the minority leader in the House said he opposes legislation that would pay our troops and essential federal workers during the Democrat shutdown. This includes Border Patrol agents, air traffic controllers, TSA agents, and more. All of whom, by the way, as these speakers have pointed out, are showing up to work without receiving a paycheck while the Democrats play their shutdown games. Some would say the soon-to-be former House Democrat leader went so far as to call this legislation, quote, a political ploy. Well, I'll tell you what a political ploy is. Holding the American people hostage just so you can avoid getting the guillotine from your far left base. That's a political ploy. The good news is this madness can end immediately if 5 Senate Democrats would grow a spine, stand up to the radicals in their party, and pass our clean CR and reopen the government. It contains no partisan policy riders, no gimmicks. In fact, it's the same spending levels that Democrats supported just 6 months ago and that you've heard repeatedly they passed 13 times under the Biden administration. We have made this plain and simple. We have made the process as plain and simple as possible. To our Senate Democrat colleagues, it's not too late to do the right and reasonable thing. Pass our CR and reopen the government for the people that you are actually elected to serve. Let's get it done today. With that, Lisa McClain.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. And I think the leader said it best. You know, I think you're right. President Trump could have the cure for cancer, and the Democrats would vote no because it came from President Trump. We have to start looking at the policies, and I think right here explains everything. I mean, Democrats have been playing political theater for 3 weeks with Republicans continuing to work and deliver some results. And here are, again, some examples, some facts. Right? Just a few days ago, Congressman Ryan McKenzie visited a Head Start program that relies on federal funding and delivered food to TSA agents. Congressman Mark Alford visited multiple rural hospitals and healthcare centers. And Congressman Jeff Crank met with credit unions to ask for flexibility with federal employees who are actually missing paychecks. Real families are paying the price for the Democrats' shutdown. And what are the Democrats leveraging the shutdown to get? Ask yourself, what is their leverage? More wasteful spending? While Republicans are working at home, Democrats are fighting for weird programs, like halfway across the world, right? Think about it. Just think about it for a minute. They're sacrificing Head Start right down your street to produce Iraq Sesame Street. So they'd rather spend money on Iraqi Sesame Street than fund your Head Start programs. But President Trump is, you know, the bad guy for putting America first. Scratch your head on that one. They're risking the safety of American skies for LGBTQI programs in the Balkans, right? Putting the Balkans over the safety of our skies. They're jeopardizing millions of paychecks to Americans to support woke programs in Honduras, Zimbabwe, Mexico, Venezuela, and Lebanon. Okay. I don't know about you, but I think that is absolutely shameful. Let me be clear. A shutdown should never be used as leverage for more wasteful spending, and especially when that spending isn't here on American soil. But that's what Schumer's dirty deal is doing. You heard me talking about it the other day, and you heard our speaker talk about it, the split screen, clean CR to work for the American people, Schumer's dirty deal CR to work for everybody but the American people. Wasteful spending at the expense of American people is not what this shutdown is about. But I want to let the American people know Republicans will not cave to Schumer's dirty deal. We will not cave to their wasteful spending. We will hold the line, and we will. I promise you, we will continue to work for the men and women and families who serve, protect, and build our great nation. Thank you.
Questions? Chad, go ahead.
Good morning, thank you.
Sir.
Can you characterize some of the dissonance inside your conference about the strategy that Republicans have? There was some criticism on the call yesterday saying that this shutdown strategy is old and Republicans need to have a new tack.
That was the word that was used. There was one member of the Republican conference. These are supposed to be, confidential off-the-record calls among colleagues, but some of you guys listen in, and I make a pleading at the beginning of every call that you wouldn't do that and wouldn't characterize it, but whoever the leak is, whatever. Beth Van Dyne was quoted. Beth is a dear friend. We've had lots of conversations about this. She was not complaining. It was not dissonance, Chad. She was pointing out that we have a lot of important work to do before the end of the year, and it was a very pleasant, constructive comment about strategy. You all have heard me say from the podium a few times, we're not pursuing a political strategy here. We're not. We're just simply trying to get the government open, and that's why the nonpartisan clean CR was the obvious vehicle to do that. And so we're not making political calculations here. We're making calculations on behalf of the American people. How can we get the government operating as soon as possible so they can get all these vital services and paychecks restored? And that's what this is about. So, I mean, if you called each individual House Republican right now, we're almost 100%, probably 99.8%, okay, of every House Republican understands exactly why we're in the situation we're in. Are we all anxious to get back to work here for regular legislative session? Absolutely.
And she wanted the House to come back in the session.
No, that's not what she said. If you had listened in directly on the phone, you would know. You can ask her about it. No, she said the message is feeling old, and I said, you know what, Beth, you're right, because we come out here and say the same thing over and over every day, but there is a method to that madness, because as I explained in my comments here, we have to repeat the simple truth over and over. Why? Because the Democrats are in an all-out assault on the truth. They're trying to obscure and distract, and you see all the different shiny objects they're trying to make everyone look at every day. I will tell you that the best evidence I have for you this morning, so that you know that the Democrats caused this shutdown, is because if the Republicans were responsible for this shutdown, that would lead the news in every mainstream media outlet every single night. It would be top fold of every newspaper on the front page every single day. Some of the mainstream media outlets aren't even covering it right now. Why? Because they're trying to give cover to the Democrats who have caused this. I mean, look, everybody knows the facts. The American people are not stupid. And we're in here every day appealing to their common sense and relaying the facts, and thankfully those facts are saturated.
Mr.
Yes,
Speaker,
yes.
just, I do want to point out that the shutdown's led to Today's Show for about the last 2 weeks.
Oh, good, thank you for that. Okay, thank you, Today Show. Thank you.
Make sure you're clear about that.
Thank you.
Secondarily, some of your Republican colleagues have raised concerns about the Trump administration opening up the market to Argentinian beef farmers, saying that it could prioritize them over American beef farmers. What do you say to your Republican colleagues about that move by the administration, and what are you doing as a Republican Congress to help American farmers, beef farmers in particular?
Well, we're doing a lot of work. We had some discussion on that yesterday, and I don't know the latest developments, but I can tell you there have been some over the last 24 hours. Harriet Hageman is one of the members of Congress from Wyoming, and she has lots of cattle ranchers and was articulating some of their thoughts and ideas, and she was connected to USTR and to the White House, and they're having those thoughtful discussions. The White House doesn't want any unintended consequences. What they're trying to do is improve the lives of everyday Americans, make our economy work again, and make sure that we are treated fairly by trading partners around the world. And there's lots of complications and a lot of moving parts when you're talking about trade agreements, renegotiating old trade agreements between, over 100 nations all at once. But they've done an extraordinary job, and they're working to fine-tune all those details, and you'd have to direct specific questions about it to the White House, because I don't really know. Yes, ma'am.
Leader Thune said it's time for the House to start thinking about coming back and passing a longer-term CR. How long should the next CR go until, and would you be open to a year-long CR?
No, I'm not sure that's what he said. I mean, he and I visited yesterday for about an hour, and Leader Thune and I are 100% aligned on all of this, as we are with the President. In fact, Leader Thune and I spent some time with the President on the phone yesterday about all this, and I was with the President in the White House the night before for a couple hours. What we're talking about is that obviously the calendar is being eaten up by all this political nonsense by the Democrats. And I used the word, it's getting a little dicey in here yesterday. Some of you quoted, Chad quoted me, I saw it this morning. I don't know how else to describe it. Look, we're running out of time to do very important, necessary things. And as Mike Simpson, Chairman Simpson pointed out here earlier, as one of the lead appropriators, chairman of one of those subcommittees, he noted that the date of November 21 was decided upon by the experts in the field, the appropriators themselves, in a bipartisan agreement. They agreed they needed 7 more weeks. Some people, as Chairman Simpson noted, some people wanted the CR to go all the way into the middle of next year, and there was all sorts of varying opinions. But the Republicans and Democrats on the Appropriations Committee came together and agreed on that appropriate date, but it was calculated to allow enough time to finish the job. I think all of them, when they decided upon that date, were in good faith, and they said, and the Democrats said to us, please make it clean, please don't add Republican priorities, because then we can get the job done. We did exactly that. We have been in good faith every single day on this, and they are eating up the clock. So we're getting closer to November. It is going to be more and more difficult with each passing hour to get all the appropriations done on time. We acknowledge that, but we have to decide this on a day-by-day basis.
Last question.
Yes, ma'am. Second row, right here. Yeah.
How comfortable are you with the president apparently seeking $230 million from the Department of Justice?
I don't know the details about that. I've just read it. I didn't talk with him about that. I know that he believes he's owed that reimbursement. What I heard yesterday was if he receives it, he was going to consider giving it to charity. I mean, he doesn't need those proceeds, but we're for the rule of law. We're for what is just and right, and it's just absurd that, I mean, as has been noted here several times this morning, they attack him for everything he does. It doesn't matter what it is. This whole dust-up about the White House, just by way of quick review, because I'm an amateur historian, you'll understand, the White House has been renovated many times over the years, you understand. I mean, it was built between 1792 and 1800, right? The British burned it down practically in 1814, and then they rebuilt it in the early 1820s. And ever since, like, we've had many presidents renovate and add things to the White House. Teddy Roosevelt built the whole West Wing. Who was it? FDR, Taft, I think, added the Oval Office. FDR made additions. I mean, Truman put ripped everything up to put a bowling alley in. FDR had added the swimming pool, I think. Barack Obama added a basketball court. President Trump's going to add the greatest improvement to the White House in the history of the building since it was originally constructed in 1800. The ballroom is going to be glorious. It's going to be used for everybody. And by the way, hey, Democrats, if you win the White House back, you get to use it too. This is for the American people, and he's using private funds to do it. How in the world could they oppose that? The only logical reason is because they have Trump derangement syndrome, and that's what explains a lot of this. 2 things. They want to oppose the president, and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are scared that they're going to lose their jobs. We all know that. I've said it over and over. It is an objective fact, and you can see it themselves. I wish that you guys would chase them down and call them up and ask them what it is they're demanding. This madness in the counterproposal, what I told you about, is the offer still on the table? They can't even articulate what they want. You know why? Because this was never about a solution on health care or anything else. This was about a spectacle. It was about a political distraction, and it was so that they could show a fight to the Marxist left in the Democratic Party. Look at the split screen. I'll leave you with that. Thanks so much.
Fact check, Brian Nobles. I was watching
The fact that I have had to get up at 5:30 every morning.
my kid who loves the Today Show always has you on.
So he knows, right? You can back me up.
I love the Today Show too, to be clear.
Do you know which way you might go, Sam? Yeah, if you go out that door,
Catch 'em.
and then
Go
out
now.
the front, then you can catch them.
No one's
Everybody has to move out of the ellipse.
So what?
Everybody has to move out of the ellipse. That means everybody with the camera, everybody with the stuff, everybody's got to move that way.
Okay. As long as you say it on camera, we're good to go.
Hearing and Policy Committee to order. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for this very critical hearing. I'm Debbie Wasserman Schultz, one of the co-chairs of the Steering and Policy Committee. As we all know, the American people face a rapidly spiraling healthcare crisis. Every day, more and more hardworking Americans are getting their premium increase notices. Republicans' agenda will rip coverage away from as many as 15 million Americans in their big ugly law, and by letting these ACA-enhanced premium tax credits expire. That's because Donald Trump and his Republican enablers in Congress chose to force hospitals to close, push people off of their Medicaid benefits, and to slash billions in future Medicare funds, all so they could hand massive permanent tax breaks to the wealthiest among us. And right now, in every corner of America, but especially in red states, families are gathering around kitchen tables to figure out how to pay for huge increases in health care coverage. For millions of them, the painful answer will be that they simply go without it. The pain this will inflict on my state will be absolutely vicious. Of the 10 highest congressional districts for ACA enrollment in this country, all 10 are in Florida. Is Governor DeSantis sounding the alarm bell? Are South Florida Republicans scrambling to solve a crisis that will bulldoze the budgets of nearly a third of their constituents? Hell no. Republicans simply don't care about middle-class Americans. It's very plain. They have one agenda only: protect Jeffrey Epstein's best friend in the White House and hand him as much power and money as possible. Right now, congressional Republicans are vacationing poolside and dreaming up talking points to defend Trump's mafia-style shakedown of taxpayer dollars to give himself a $250 million holiday bonus in the form of reimbursement for lawsuits, reimbursement for criminal cases that he was convicted of. In the middle of a government shutdown, Donald Trump really is floating having the Department of Justice give him a $250 million settlement while he is the sitting president, with his own private lawyers now working for the Justice Department and being the ones in position to make that decision to say yes. Speaker Johnson is right now limbering up for his next round of verbal gymnastics to explain why he refuses to swear in Congresswoman-elect Grijalva. But you know what else is happening? Over 80,000 people in my district are staring each and every month over his family of 5. But Republicans just don't care. There's a woman in Cooper City who reached out to me in a panic that her coverage premiums are about to triple. Republicans don't care about her either. A small business owner in one of my town halls told me she'll have to kill dental and medical insurance coverage for all of her employees. Republicans could care less about her or her coworkers. Since this shutdown started, Trump has hosted his billionaire pals at the White House to thank them for bankrolling his new ballroom and gone golfing or on taxpayer-funded trips every weekend. And later this week, he's going to leave the country during a government shutdown. But House and Senate Democrats, we are standing with the American people. We're here, and we're ready to negotiate a bipartisan agreement that reopens the government, lowers health care costs, and saves Americans' health care. We're fighting for the receptionist in Fort Lauderdale who told me her health coverage will double and will wash away $3,200 more from her annual budget. Sadly, there are millions more stories like these. We'll hear more of them today from people who are working on the front lines to keep America healthy, working, and strong. And now I have the honor to yield to my colleague and friend, our Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who's leading the fight for our affordable health care for all. Leader?
Good morning. Thank you, Debbie, for your leadership. It's an honor to be joined by my colleagues in government, House Democratic leaders, Steering and Policy Committee co-chairs, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Robin Kelly, and Nanette Barragan, as well as all of my colleagues from the House Democratic Caucus. In particular, it's an honor to join our witnesses today and to thank each and every one of you for your presence, for your leadership, for your willingness to share your stories with the American people. Rob, James, Lindsay, Paul, and Danny, we appreciate all of you coming to testify before us today, and more importantly, your service to the country. Today is day 22 of the Trump Republican shutdown of the federal government, and all across the country, everyday Americans are hurting. Hardworking federal employees are working without pay or have been furloughed from their positions. Those who have dedicated their lives to public service have no certainty about how they will pay their bills, mortgage, rent, or feed their families. National parks and museums are closed. Federal agencies are operating at limited capacity to assist everyday Americans with the real issues that they confront day to day. If this shutdown of the federal government by Donald Trump and Republicans continue, folks may even lose nutritional assistance benefits that they depend on to feed themselves, their children, and their families and keep food on the table. To make matters worse, Republicans won't even commit to making sure, consistent with the law that was passed in 2019, that all federal workers receive back pay when the government reopens. It's unconscionable, unacceptable, and un-American, and we are determined to make sure that every single federal employee receives the entirety of their pay. Republicans have been running an extreme play from the very beginning of this year. Donald Trump and his out-of-control administration have already illegally fired more than 200,000 federal employees prior to the beginning of the government shutdown. And they continue to visit chaos, cruelty, and confusion on the American people. Day after day, Speaker Johnson has kept House Republicans on a taxpayer-funded vacation, canceling votes 4 consecutive weeks. They shut the government down, ran out of town, and now are nowhere to be found. In fact, since July 22nd, 3 months ago, House Republicans have only worked in Washington for 14 days since the end of July. They are hiding from the American people, but House Democrats understand our responsibility to run toward and embrace the American people as we defend their health care, their quality of life, and work hard to drive down the high cost of living in the United States of America. Meanwhile, President Trump is busy demolishing the White House to build a ballroom to celebrate him like a king, and giving $40 billion to his right-wing dictator friend in Argentina, but can't find a dime to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for tens of millions of Americans. But there's a simple solution for Republicans. Get back to work. Sit down with Democrats. We're ready, we're willing, we're able to reopen the government, to enact a bipartisan spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, and to address the Republican health care crisis that is devastating families all across this country. Thank you once again to our incredible, patriotic witnesses who are with us here today. We're appreciative of your participation, of the work that you and every single federal employee does for our nation, day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year, even when operating under adverse circumstances of being targeted by your own president. With that, it's my honor to yield to my good friend and a fearless champion for the American people, the Honorable Democratic Whip, Catherine Clark.
Thank you so much, Leader Jeffries. We are so grateful for your courageous leadership, and thanks to the co-chairs for once again organizing this hearing, and above all, thanks to our witnesses for being with us today. And we want to take this moment again to thank you for the service that you provide to the country. We certainly stand with the words of the leader. You deserve full pay, and you deserve to work in an environment where your work is valued and the threat of random firings, of withholding of pay, is not something that you should live under. And we're very, very grateful for the work you do, as well as for being here with us. This testimony is going to underscore a theme of this White House and the Republicans in Congress. And it's a theme that's at the heart of the Republican budget and this Republican shutdown and this Republican health care crisis. And it is the one constant in the chaos that we are seeing. They always target Americans who have already had to sacrifice. Americans working a second job to keep their kids fed. Americans who have chosen to serve their country. Those are the people that Republicans expect to get by with less. It's never the billionaires. It's never large corporations. It's working parents on Medicaid. It's veterans on the ACA. It's service members and others reporting for work without pay. And it's our civil servants. That's a pretty sick moral compass to have as an elected official. And our constituents know it's wrong. And that's why we are seeing millions speaking out, pushing back, and standing up for a government that is worthy of the American people. Exactly the kind of government our first witness is advocating for. Rob Shriver is Managing Director of Civil Service Strong, a nonpartisan initiative supporting our civil servants and promoting good government. Rob, thank you for being with us here today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you all for the invitation to participate in today's Steering and Policy Committee hearing. Thank you to my fellow witnesses, fellow former and current federal workers and community leaders. My name is Rob Shriver. I'm the Managing Director of Civil Service Strong and Good Government Initiatives at Democracy Forward. Our CEO, Skye Perriman, sends her regards. She is in Memphis, where we have challenged the deployment of the National Guard. I think most of you know Democracy Forward's work, but for those who may not be familiar, Democracy Forward is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that advances democracy and social progress through litigation, policy, public education, and regulatory engagement. In particular, Democracy Forward provides legal representation to people and communities across the country free of charge. Since President Trump's inauguration, we have filed hundreds of legal actions and launched more than 150 investigations, securing significant victories that protect people from a diverse range of harmful policies. We are still winning nationwide orders, including orders that vindicate the powers of Congress that this president is seeking to take away. We believe our efforts and the efforts of the pro-democracy community have resulted in the largest and most successful affirmative litigation effort against an excessive executive branch in U.S. history. As many of you know, in anticipation of and in response to the unprecedented attack on federal workers by this administration, we launched multiple initiatives to support federal employees. The main pillar of these initiatives is our Civil Service Strong program. Civil Service Strong has been incredibly effective these past several months in building infrastructure and support for federal workers around the country and in the court of public opinion. But we also know there are important battles that continue to need to be won in the courtroom. There are two that I want to highlight for you today. First, when the administration attempted to use reductions in force to illegally fire federal workers during the shutdown and exert pressure in the shutdown negotiations, Democracy Forward and our co-counsel filed a lawsuit on behalf of the AFGE and AFSCME, the two largest public sector unions. Last week, the court issued a temporary restraining order blocking the shutdown rifts for federal employees in any program, project, or activity that includes any bargaining unit or member that's represented by AFGE or AFSCME during or because of the federal government shutdown. In order to expand the coverage of this temporary restraining order to more federal employees, we filed an amended complaint that added more union plaintiffs, the SEIU, NAGE, and NFFE. And we have now filed a second amended complaint, adding several additional unions, NTEU, AFT, and IFPTE. The court has thus far expanded the TRO to the first set of new unions, and we have requested that the court expand the TRO to include the second set of unions as well. We will continue to provide Congress and the public information on this case as the proceedings continue. The second shutdown-related case was in response to the administration's unprecedented step of using official agency systems to force furloughed Department of Education employees to send partisan political messages. Without notice or consent, the Department of Education replaced federal employees' automatic out-of-office email replies with messages casting blame for the shutdown, written in the first person as if from the employees themselves. Democracy Forward and our co-counsel are representing AFGE in a lawsuit which argues that this manipulation is government-compelled speech, thereby violating the First Amendment. The department has since changed the language a little, but not enough. The partisan language is still up, it's still unlawful, and we are still challenging it. I want to acknowledge the significant amount of fear-mongering over the harms that would ensue during a shutdown and the possibility that the courts would close. Despite the lapse in government funding, courtrooms across the country remain open, and the fight to defend people's rights continues. Federal judges from Rhode Island to California, nominated by Democrat and Republican presidents, including President Trump, have rejected the administration's attempts to delay litigation, ruling that the shutdown does not excuse the government from complying with the law and citing the court's needs to continue their constitutional functions. New cases are being filed, and district and circuit courts have refused to halt proceedings, ensuring that communities, workers, and advocates can continue to challenge unlawful actions even when the government shuts down. Democracy Forward is deeply committed to federal workers and the rule of law, and we will continue to look for ways that we can support both during the government shutdown. Thank you again for the invitation to join today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Rob. We appreciate you being with us here today and for your prior service at the Office of Personnel Management. Now I wanted to introduce James Jones to this hearing. James is an Army veteran, a man who defended our country in uniform overseas and who served in the Gulf War. After his years of military service, he joined the federal workforce as a civilian, becoming a maintenance mechanic at the Blue Ridge Parkway with the National Park Service. His work helped to make it possible for millions of Americans to visit the parkway's many trails, roads, and campsites every year. James served his country in the military and now works for the public good. As a result of his deployment, he has chronic health conditions that require treatment. He deserves the best care that the VA has to offer, and he deserves a government that works for him. But that is not what we are seeing from Donald Trump and congressional Republicans. Trump froze hiring at the VA, pushed extreme cuts to veterans' health care, and has made it harder for veterans to see a doctor and receive care. And now, on top of that, Republicans in Congress have shut down the government, forcing hundreds of thousands of federal workers to go without pay. Furloughing workers like James. Let me be clear. Republicans are turning people away from their jobs and without pay, disrupting services for American families, all while they stay away from Washington, D.C. on vacation. You deserve better. Our veterans deserve better. Our federal workers deserve better. James, thank you for your service and for joining us here today. You're now recognized.
Thank you, Congressman. And thanks to this committee for allowing me the opportunity to speak. As you mentioned, Congressman, I am James Jones. I'm from North Carolina. I'm from District 5, Virginia Fox's district, to be clear. I'm also a steward with AFGE Local 446, and I'm an organizer with the Federal Unionist Network. I'm a maintenance mechanic with the Park Service. I work at the Blue Ridge Parkway in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. I am a veteran. I was a combat engineer during Operations Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I served about 9 months in country during that conflict. I'm here today speaking on my personal capacity and as an organizer for the FUN, the Federal Unionist Network. And I'd also mention combined service. I have over 28 years of service between the military and my service to the Park Service. So one of the reasons I'm speaking here today, and probably one of the most important ones, is over this healthcare battle that Leader Jeffries mentioned earlier. I live in a red state. It's sort of a swing state, as you all know, but I do live in District 5, which is Congresswoman Fox's district. It's a poor area, you know. Her district is made up of hardworking folks that rely on the ACA subsidies. I know many folks that are on the ACA. Most of them are either self-employed or they work for an employer that doesn't offer health insurance, or if they do, they're still on the ACA. I was told by some of these folks, if the subsidies expire, they're going to be in a mess. They won't be able to afford the premiums to go to the doctor. Some of these folks are on Medicaid as well. They're so poor they have to have the Medicaid recipients so they can go to the doctor because they don't make enough money to even afford the rates for ACA now. If they lose this, it's going to be bad for this whole district, the counties that are within her district and other counties in North Carolina. Approximately 30% in my county, Watauga County, of these residents are on these programs, and that's a big chunk of the population to rely on those programs. VA access, I'm a veteran. Like I said earlier, I served my country in Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I've accessed the VA. I suffer from ailments from that conflict, mainly burn pit issues with breathing, respiratory issues, and some other issues as well. I rely on the VA for my health care. I use the VA for everything, my vision care, my dental care, my primary care. I love the VA. I really do. It's a great place to get health care. The Asheville VA, where close to Boone, where I live, is one of the top-rated hospitals in the VA system. And the Hickory Clinic as well, where I usually go sometimes to get vision and dental work done. VA health care is not a handout. Veterans earned that care, especially veterans that served in open conflict that suffers from their ailments by fighting for this country. But every week this shutdown drags on, the promise gets weaker. Clinics are short-staffed. They're even getting more short-staffed due to the VA cuts. Doctors and nurses are leaving. The VA, they try to bring in new doctors and nurses, but it's hard because most of these folks feel like they're not going to have a job in 6 months or a year. So it's hard to hire people and replace the folks that are leaving. Claims are delayed. Folks that file disability claims, they're seeing huge delays. It was already delayed roughly around 120 days when a person filed their claim. Now that's increased. And then this administration is talking about cutting another 30,000 positions from the VA. That's unacceptable. That's not making the promise to these veterans that this country made to them back during the Civil War, after the Civil War. But it seems like this administration can find money for other things, as the leader mentioned earlier, $40 billion to Argentina, $200 million for a ballroom, $400 billion, I think, for the jet from Qatar. I mean, I can't keep up with all the money that this administration is wasting, and not a dime for the American people. I've worked for the National Park Service for roughly 25 years. My job is to keep the parks safe and open for folks to visit. And during this shutdown, they're still open, and that's a problem because there's not enough staff to keep the park clean and to protect the resource. Visitors are flooding in right now by thousands since it's leaf season. It's peak leaf season in the Blue Ridge, as most of y'all probably know. Shenandoah, Blue Ridge, the Smokies, this is our busiest time of the year, and there's hardly anyone there to keep up policing the parks and making them safe for folks, just a limited law enforcement staff. I know what public service means. It means you show up and do your job for your country, not for a party or a president. We as federal employees work for the American people, and that's who I serve. I can't tell you, just about every day I go to work, people thank me for the job I do to keep the parks safe and keep them clean, keep them open for them to enjoy. People love their parks. We're probably one of the most favorable federal agencies in the service, and that's why I work there, because it is a great job. As I said earlier, I'm in a red district. Trump said he's getting rid of these Democrat programs, and these programs these programs that we have, like Medicaid, the ACA subsidies, and others, help everybody in my district. If they're gone, it's really going to affect them in a negative way. My district went for Trump both in 2016 and 2024, and a lot of my friends supported him. But lately they're saying, I didn't vote for this. They didn't vote for the parks to close or to be short-staffed, health care costs to skyrocket, and veterans to lose care or have delayed care, and for tens of thousands of federal employees to be at risk of losing their jobs. Another thing I want to address is the unconstitutional executive overreach of this administration. I asked the Democratic Party to defend and support public services through adequate funding established by Congress and ensure those funds are spent efficiently and wisely and protect the power of the purse. As I said earlier, I'm an AFG member, Local 446. I would love this party to defend our unions and our collective bargaining agreements that this administration has sought to destroy and eliminate. In fact, it's even in the law. 5 U.S.C. 71, Congress found that collective bargaining safeguards the public interest, contributes to the effective conduct of public business, and facilitates and encourages the amicable settlement of disputes between employees and their employers concerning conditions of employment. Congress has determined that labor unions and collective bargaining in the federal service are in fact in the public interest. I asked that we could pass legislation that reverses Trump's executive order terminating collective bargaining agreements with agencies as the VA, such as the VA, the DOD, EPA, and so on. Protect official time and the use of agency facilities for union officials to represent employees, as outlined in many collective bargaining agreements, and protect payroll dues deductions that this administration has eliminated. In summary, Congress must hold the line for health care for workers and democracy. Federal workers are standing up for the people and the programs and services we provide. We will forego paychecks if it means saving the vital programs and services that tens of millions of Americans rely upon. We are federal workers, union members and public servants who have devoted our lives and careers to administering government programs and services. This shutdown is a test of who the government serves, billionaires or the American people. People like me, dedicated federal workers and veterans of combat, took an oath to serve this country, and we're still keeping it. Now it's time for Congress to hold the line for us and for every veteran and working family that's been left waiting. Thank you.
Thank you to Steering and Policy Committee for their hard work in organizing these hearings so our constituents can be heard despite Speaker Johnson continuing the congressional Republican vacation for more than a month. And thank you to our witnesses for being here today. As we discuss the urgent need to prevent the devastating cuts to health care and the impacts of the Republican shutdown, I'm honored to introduce my constituent today, Miss Lindsay Latham. Lindsay and her husband, Toby, live in Fairfax County, Virginia, where they're raising their 10-year-old son, Calvin, and their daughter, Lucy. As Lindsay will share, Calvin has multiple disabilities. And like so many families navigating disabilities and complex medical challenges, Lindsay and her family rely on Medicaid coverage and support from the Department of Education's Office of Special Education Programs, both of which Trump and Republicans are trying to slash. During his campaign for the presidency, Donald Trump looked into the camera and promised he would not cut Medicaid. Then, he proudly signed into law the largest cut to Medicaid in history. He lied to Lindsay and her family. He lied to millions of Americans who rely on Medicaid. And earlier this morning, Lindsay described to me how she felt when she heard congressional Republicans cheering after they passed the big ugly bill. She told me that she sat in her car in her driveway and she sobbed. Adding insult to injury, Donald Trump and Russ Vought are using the shutdown to, in their words, punish Democrats. On October 10th, the Trump administration and Russ Vought announced the illegal firing of 4,000 federal workers. On October 11th, we had a fall festival in Fairfax. And I spent several hours there talking to hundreds of my constituents. I heard stories of how the health care cuts would impact them. I heard from federal workers who had been fired, attacked, denigrated over the 9 months of Trump's term. But there's one conversation that has stuck with me. A gentleman came up to me and he told me that he received the RIF notice the evening before. This was Saturday morning. He received the RIF notice Friday evening. And he worked at the Department of Education in transition services to help kids like Calvin and families like Lindsay's navigate the challenging transition from secondary education to support in the community or workplace supports. And like Lindsay, he was sobbing. He was sobbing not because he lost his job. He was sobbing because he knew that kids like Calvin and families like Lindsay's would no longer have the services that he and his colleagues delivered to them in the Department of Education. So if Donald Trump and Russ Vought think they are punishing Democrats in Congress, the reality is they're punishing families like Lindsay's and kids like Calvin all across this country. So I want to thank Lindsay for her courage in speaking today, for her advocacy on behalf of Calvin and millions of kids like Calvin all across this country.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Latham, and I'm from Virginia. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my family's story with you today. Our son, Calvin, was diagnosed with multiple disabilities at 15 months old. Thanks to the Department of Education and Medicaid, he began receiving early intervention services. At 2.5, he transitioned to a half-day preschool program for students with disabilities, where, thanks to Medicaid funding, he received in-school services such as occupational, physical, and speech therapies. Medicaid also provided the evaluation that led him to be issued an augmentative and alternative, or AAC, communication device. This device opened up a world of possibilities for him. These services are currently benefiting nearly 1 million children. In those early years, we were naive. His school team cared deeply, but their resources were limited, and Calvin's language development began to lag behind his typically developing peers. The tools and training needed to implement AAC meaningfully in the classroom were, and still are, being developed in our school systems. Grants from the Office of Special Education Programs, OSIP, provide funding to bring special education professionals and paraprofessionals evidence-based practices to the classrooms. As we struggled to navigate these challenges, we became active in our community and helped start a county-wide special education PTA. Through this work, we heard countless stories, some heartbreaking, about young students being restrained and secluded as early as the age of 5. As you can imagine, causing significant trauma. These concerns led to a lawsuit which ultimately banned seclusion in all but 2 schools in our district by 2022. Recently, the Commonwealth of Virginia's Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, JLARC, released a report on special education that underscores why federal oversight by OSERS is so critical. The findings were alarming, to say the least. Over the last decade, Virginia has decreased the spending on students with disabilities by 16%, even as the population continues to grow. Half of the IEPs lacked measurable academic or functional goals, and students of color with disabilities are disproportionately impacted by these failures, just to name a few. It is OSIP that collects, analyzes, and reports this data to ensure proper funding, appropriate staffing levels, resources, and trainings reach the classrooms. They uphold the IDEA's promise that every child, regardless of their ability, deserves a free and appropriate public education. Right now, OSIP should be collecting the data and analyzing it to evaluate the use of the $15.1 billion in grants distributed to states in fiscal year 25. They should be using this data to determine where these resources will be allocated for fiscal year 26. But these critical activities are not happening due to the government shutdown. Now we have learned that on October 10th, the administration informed approximately 95% of OSIP staff that their jobs will be eliminated within 60 days through the reduction in force. Additional key offices within the department that are critically important for students with disabilities have been gutted, including the RSA, OCR, and OESE. Unless reversed, these rifts will become permanent by December 9th, 2025. Legally, states will still be required to provide services spelled out in my son's IEP, but without federal oversight, how will we be able to enforce these services in schools if the school decides to stop providing them? Without federal oversight, what recourse do families have if their child's rights to a free and appropriate public education are not fulfilled? The answer to this, of course, is none. Families of students with disabilities are terrified about the prospect of permanently losing the Department of Education and its oversight of special education and rehabilitative services. This, coupled with a budget law that cuts an historic $1 trillion to the Medicaid program, is just too much for our families to bear. Please do everything you can to stop dismantling our civil rights. Thank you for your time and your commitment to protecting the rights of students with disabilities.
Thank you, Lindsay, for sharing your story about what's at stake if children like your son, Calvin, cannot access special education services during a government shutdown. House Democrats will keep fighting for you, for Calvin, and for your family. That's why we're here. Republicans cut Medicaid, and now they shut down the government. Donald Trump, in office and management, and Budget Director Russell Vought are taking advantage of the Republican shutdown. They're firing federal workers, they're punishing political opponents, and they're shutting off essential services that Americans need to survive. Their actions undermine our hardworking civil servants and screw over American families. Now I get the honor to introduce our next witness, Paul Asidebi. Paul understands the stakes of this moment. He's a civil rights attorney and a dedicated public servant who has been directly impacted by the Trump administration's attacks on federal workers. In September, Paul was terminated from his role at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Among other responsibilities, he worked to enforce the Fair Housing Act, which ensures equitable housing access, and holds landlords, lenders, and real estate agents accountable for discriminatory practices. Paul was terminated for speaking out against changes to HUD under the Trump administration. The administration has infringed on Paul's whistleblower rights and failed to meet its legal requirements to enforce the Fair Housing Act and guarantee meaningful housing access for all. Paul, thank you for joining us today. You are now recognized.
Congresswoman, good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Asadebe. As of today, I am still a trial attorney at the Office of Fair Housing at HUD. I'm also a steward with AFGE 476, and I'm speaking here today in my personal capacity and as an organizer with the Federal Unionist Network. And we're here today because we're in the middle of a government shutdown, but the truth is my agency has been steadily shutting down since day one of this administration. Like the Congresswoman said, I'm an attorney in the Civil Rights Office at HUD that makes sure that landlords and banks and governments in this country can't discriminate against people in housing. We make sure that every single person in this country has access to safe and affordable housing, which is something that this administration ran on, but that is being denied to people right now as we speak. And even before being furloughed, our ability to do our work was being dismantled piece by piece and worker by worker. We've dealt with gag orders that stop us from talking to you, the American people, the people that we're trying to serve, when you file a case, or stop us from talking to the landlord to stop them from retaliating against you, or just to get you housing quickly. We're not allowed to do that anymore. We've had political appointees block us from investigating cases, not because those cases weren't valid or that they had any type of reason, just because a political appointee doesn't like that type of case. It doesn't fit with administration priorities. And so people are denied justice, just like that. We've had political appointees block us from, after we find that discrimination probably happened in a case, we're supposed to send that to the Department of Justice, or we're supposed to prosecute it ourselves. But instead, they just block those cases illegally, with no basis at all. They just stop it. They illegally canceled settlements that parties already agreed to. The people who are actually involved in the case, a landlord or a bank is willing to make someone whole, willing to give them the housing that they need, make sure that they're not evicted, get them an emergency transfer so that they can get off the street or not be stalked by their abuser anymore. And HUD is now, again, political appointees, non-lawyers, just random people are coming in and saying, no, we don't like that. That doesn't fit with administration priorities, so we're going to just squash that. That's what we're dealing with at HUD right now. And those settlements are one of the ways that we help people most frequently, because that's the way that you can get free legal help and to have someone address your issue without it taking years and years of litigation. But we've been cut out of that process entirely. And it's not just that process that the fair housing lawyers, the civil servants that are devoted to making sure that you have your civil rights in practice and not just on paper, we're cut out of the process for making sure that HUD itself doesn't violate civil rights laws, because we have all types of programs. We hand out billions and billions in federal dollars, and we're supposed to actively make sure that that money is providing equal access to housing to every single person in this country. But the way that they're doing it now, they don't want us involved in that process because we would tell them that what they're doing is illegal. So they cut us out of that process. They don't want to hear that what they're doing violates the law and hurts people. But it's our job to tell them that. And because that's our job, they targeted the workers to actually protect your rights through mass firings, through mass forced resignations. And when we stayed, a lot of us stayed despite all of the abuse that I've talked about. We stayed to serve the American people anyway, and they responded to that by reassigning us out of our jobs. So like I said, I'm a civil rights lawyer. They want me and most of my team to instead spend our time defending the agency for its illegal acts instead of defending the American people. That's just wrong. We all know that. Every single person knows that that's wrong. And recently, as they claim it's due to the shutdown rifts, but things that they were already planning to do, they fired almost all of the investigators all across the country that actually investigate your rights. So you can't tell me that you're going to enforce people's housing civil rights. Meanwhile, no one can look into any case to figure out whether someone's rights were violated. That just doesn't pass any smell test. That doesn't make sense. But the reason that I spoke out about all of this is because I'm a federal worker and we took an oath to defend the Constitution and defend your rights from anybody that tries to take them, including the president, including an agency head. It doesn't matter who it is. And because of that, we collectively blew the whistle on the illegal acts and the mismanagement that are happening at HUD. 4 of us, dedicated civil servants, took the risk of telling the truth to the public. And like we're seeing all across the federal government, the 2 of us that were public on that whistleblower report were fired, explicitly due to our telling the truth, due to whistleblowing. And even though that happened, we refused to be silent because the American people deserve to know what is happening to their government. And they deserve to know that the rights that people marched and bled and died for are being gutted from the inside under this administration. So it's really important for people to understand that right now, it's time for federal workers and Congress and the American people as a whole to say that enough is enough with all of this. That means rejecting cuts to health care that are happening at the expense of working people. That means making sure that every single dollar that is authorized by Congress is actually spent on services and protections that people need. That means stopping and reversing the mass firings and the political interference that are happening at agencies all across the country that actually try to serve the public. And that means creating real oversight and protections for whistleblowers like me and for everyone that's facing political retaliation right now under this administration. And that also means, as I'm here with the Federal Unionist Network, and I'm a steward, that means ending the union busting that we're seeing, because those unions are the ones that gave me the strength and the backing to be here telling you the truth right now. It would not be happening without the unions, and they're attacking the unions to stop people like me and people who try to organize to protect their agencies from talking to you. So lastly, I want to say to everyone here and to everyone who's watching this at home, I need you to understand that what's happening right now to your government is not normal. It's not okay. This is a 5-alarm fire for the health, safety, and equality of the American people and for democracy. So we all have a choice to make right now. This is the time to make that choice. We have to choose between a government by the few and for the few and only them, or a government of the many and for everyone. And I know what I choose personally.
Well, Paul, that was just fantastic testimony. Is it on? Is it on?
No.
I want to just thank you, Paul. That was awesome, and thanks for having the guts to stand up and to make your case, to be a whistleblower and to make the case here today. We're just very grateful to you. We're grateful to the Steering and Policy Committee for setting up this hearing to try and tell people what's going on. And we're grateful to all the witnesses that are here today for being here to help us to educate the public as to what's happening here in our country. That's why we have these hearings. That's why we're going through this process right now. We're trying to break through all the noise that's out there and talk about what's really going on. If you ask the American people right now, what's the biggest issue you're facing? They're going to say affordability and the cost of living. That's the biggest concern that the American people have right now. And we see prices are not going down, they're going up because of the tariffs. We see energy prices going up because they cut all these green energy projects that were ready to go forward, and they cut all the subsidies for it at a time. There's rising demand for energy because of all these data centers. They're cutting projects that are ready to go online. They're seeing interest rates are still high. Even if you see 0.25% here, 0.25% there, interest rates are abnormally high right now. One of the reasons there's upward pressure on interest rates because there's so much debt that was created from the big, beautiful bill, as they call it. And we see this upward pressure on interest rates. It makes it hard for you to buy a house or get a loan. And the big issue of the shutdown, which we are trying to tell the American people about and to get this administration and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to recognize, is that people's health insurance premiums are about to skyrocket. And they're going to hear about it all over the country on November 1st when open enrollment starts, and it's going to take place on January 1st when it hits, and people are going to see their bills go up literally thousands of dollars. Not hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. And so we're doing this to try and educate people as to what's going on. That's why we're doing a hearing like this today. So it's breaking through. It's starting to break through. 13 Republicans yesterday sent a letter to the Speaker. They did their obligatory praise of the Speaker, and the Democrats are no good, and what they're supposed to do on their side, I guess. But they said in this letter from 13 Republicans, they said when the government reopens, we should immediately turn our focus to the growing crisis of health care affordability and the looming expiration of the enhanced ACA premium tax credits. Millions of Americans are facing drastic premium increases. The message is getting through. That's from 13 Republicans. They said allowing these tax credits to lapse without a clear path forward would risk real harms to those we represent. We're breaking through. They're starting to get the message as to what's actually happening here today. And I want to recognize, though, that a lot of people are suffering right now because of the shutdown. A lot of people are being hurt. We have to figure out how to address these rising premiums, these rising costs of health insurance, and get the government reopened. But in the meanwhile, people are suffering like my constituent that's here today, Danny Choi. Danny, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so grateful to you. I just want to introduce you to everyone that's here. Danny's worked for 3 years at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, also known as CMS, serving as a health care insurance specialist. He's a member of AFG Local 1923. And Danny's furloughed, as is half of his department is furloughed. His last pay period, he received only 80% of his paycheck. And this week, he's going to miss his entire paycheck if we don't reopen the government. And Danny's having a hard time paying his bills. Danny's parents are immigrants. My father was born in Italy. His parents were born in China. He grew up in Queens. Danny is a veteran. And we should recognize that 25% of the employees of the United States federal government are veterans. So we certainly, in 2012, while serving in Afghanistan, he earned the Navy Achievement Medal. And Danny's story is the American story. And he wants to do his job. And he also deserves his paycheck. We've got to end this shutdown. So, Danny, tell us some more of your story, please.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Danny Choi, rank and file union member of AFGE Local 1923, proud federal worker at the Department of Health and Human Services and U.S. Marine veteran, collective 7 years of federal service, speaking in my own personal capacity. I'm also speaking today, similar to my colleagues to my side, as an organizer with the Federal Unionist Network, a broad coalition of unionists striving to protect the federal workforce and saving our public services. Like my colleagues next to me, I am here today to advocate for the protection against mass terminations impacting agency missions, protecting scientific integrity of our health and research agencies, and to support the federal workforce in continuing to do our jobs serving the American people. We have to remember that this shutdown crisis is a culmination of events starting with the mass illegal terminations and resignations earlier this year, in the spring and the summer, to the partisan spending bill that resulted in healthcare cuts, cuts in funding for food assistance, and now further cuts for federal agencies, further threatening our civil service. This is not making our agencies more efficient, and America will not be healthier from these changes. We can expect in New York State, where I live, the recent spending legislation or big ugly bill will lead to large healthcare cuts, estimated to result in 1.5 million New Yorkers losing health insurance coverage, $8 billion lost expected by hospitals, and over 60,000 healthcare-related jobs lost. By cutting civil servants and lowering budgets, there are federal agencies that are no longer able to effectively carry out their missions and comply with the statutory requirements. We have seen colleagues from other agencies put on administrative leave for signing a letter of dissent describing how agencies are deviating from agency mission at the EPA and FEMA. These actions create an environment that punishes lawful dissent, threatens our ability to ensure that the public is protected, and to do the job we signed up to do. The impact from loss of staff results in longer wait times from Social Security call centers, veterans having delayed access to services, and less protection for the American public for things like food inspections and medical device recalls. As a furloughed federal worker speaking in my own personal capacity and at risk to my professional career, I'm speaking out today to share the federal worker perspective to shutdown and what we want to see from our leaders and representatives. When addressing policy for health insurance, we need to be clear that when we implement guardrails to protect against fraud, we must not forget about access and affordability of healthcare. Increasing the cost of health insurance will cause many people to opt out of health insurance. choose to delay preventative care and increase use of the emergency room instead of using the primary care doctor. Increases in premiums and deductibles for the marketplace plans offered by the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare will affect about 20 million people. Work requirements implemented for Medicaid will lead to millions losing coverage and increase administrative burdens, despite prior research indicating that these requirements do not have any significant impact on Medicaid enrollees working. These policy changes will also contribute to higher premiums in other commercial insurance plans as well. We can expect that for-profit insurance companies will adjust their policy to kick people out from getting the healthcare they need through higher out-of-pocket costs. If our goal is to protect and improve the health of this country, continue to hold the line and continue fighting to defend our healthcare. If our goal is to protect our democracy, keep pushing for bipartisan budget negotiations to provide adequate funding for all our critical services. We must include protection to ensure that funds previously appropriated by our Congress are spent to provide those services. No more pocket rescissions or impoundment. Protect the congressional power of the purse. If our goal is to protect the working class, continue to stand with labor. Protect our collective bargaining rights, protect our rights as federal workers, and let us do our jobs. Federal workers are proud to serve the American public and want to continue to performing our duties with integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Choi. Rosa DeLauro for a few remarks.
Thank you very much. And really, it still is morning. It's not exactly noon yet, so good morning to everyone. I want to say thank you to the Steering and Policy Committee for convening what is an important discussion and important education for people of this nation. I want to say a thank you to all of you, to our witnesses, for your service in whatever form that may have taken as a veteran, as somebody who's worked in the Park Service, as civil rights lawyers, etc. But thank you for not being afraid to stand up, and to use your word, Danny, to fight back, because that's where we are. We need to fight back. We have the courts, yes, they are our friends, and we work with them. We have legislation that we can be engaged in, but we are in the minority as Democrats in the House, and we can make the fight over the legislation, but we don't have the numbers to win the battle. But the third pillar is public outcry. Public outcry is what is going to tip the balance, and you are engaged in that, and I'm grateful for that. Your stories are stories that we need to tell, and that you can help us to tell, because you do have just not your own stories, but those of others. And that has got to be the order of the day for us, is to let the American people know what is happening. I serve as the ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee. And if I can take an opportunity to step back a moment and offer some broader context for President Trump's shutdown and how we got here. Since the moment that they took office, President Trump and the Office of Management and Budget Director, Russell Vought, have launched a scorched earth campaign to decimate the federal government and the programs and the services the American people depend on. Their goal is to dismantle the federal government. Make no mistake. From the beginning, their approach has been burn it down extremism. Russ Vought himself wanted this shutdown, and he has publicly said that his goal is to make sure that federal employees are, quote, traumatically affected, end quote. President Trump has said he is targeting layoffs at, quote, Democrat employees. These are not just policy differences. For them, it is clearly personal. Since the beginning of this year, 200,000 federal employees have either been laid off or left the workforce. 200,000 federal employees. President Trump and Russ Vought right now are actively trying to lay off thousands more workers across the Department of Health and Human Services, Education, Commerce, Treasury, Energy, Housing and Urban Development, Homeland Security, and Interior. They have canceled energy projects in Democrat-led states. They have frozen public infrastructure funds in Democratic-led cities. They had just recently terminated a series of Army Corps of Engineers contracts in New York. They have boasted that their goal is to lay off upwards of 10,000 more federal workers. It has nothing to do with a shutdown. It has all to do with they wanting to dismantle the federal government. This assault is what they have always wanted. It is what they were already doing. It is not a new pressure tactic. It is not a strategic maneuver. It is a corrupt abuse of power that they have chosen to carry out because they are corrupt and they are illegal. The administration does not want to be held accountable for these actions, and so they are trying to blame them on President Trump's shutdown. Meanwhile, President Trump's refusal to prevent health care costs from skyrocketing for 24 million Americans is bringing more harm to communities every day. But people are getting the messages. Connecticut's premium costs went out on the 20th. All over this country, they are getting the notices that tell them what they are going to have to pay and what they will not be able to pay. The NIH, the National Institutes of Health, has been forced to freeze all new grants and contracts, interrupting crucial research into debilitating diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, ALS, heart disease, rare genetic conditions, countless other health issues that impact families all across this country. As we sit here today, we have no idea how the administration will deal with the lack of funding for both SNAP, the food stamp program, and the Women, Infants, and Children program, WIC, on November 1st. And yes, they don't know where the money will come from, but Argentina will get $40 billion. Schools and children who rely on programs like Head Start will begin to see funding shortfalls as new grants are not issued. Special education is being cut. This puts thousands of low-income children at risk of losing access to educational support early on in the school year. But Argentina will get $40 billion. Community health centers, nursing homes will be left with only partial funding support as the shutdown persists, putting a significant strain on their capacity to treat the primarily low-income patients who rely on their services. Argentina will get $40 billion. Instead of allowing President Trump and Russ Vought to run roughshod over Congress's power of the purse, refusing to do anything to stop health care costs from skyrocketing and prolonging this shutdown, it is hurting our communities. Medicaid covers children, those who are disabled, low-wage workers, and seniors, all who are going to be ravaged in what they are doing. House Republicans should end their month-long vacation, return to Washington, D.C., work to address all of these issues. And just within the last 48 hours, our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, and the leader in the Senate, Senator Schumer, asked for a meeting with the president, and he summarily said no, he would not meet. We are here, as you all can see. We are ready to reopen the government as soon as the Republicans decide that they are ready to do their jobs. I thank my colleagues on the committee for convening this meeting and our witnesses for their time today. You know, my friends, the Congress is an institution that responds to external pressure. You are that external pressure. We need your voices and your networks loud and clear to say enough is enough. Let us move forward. Let's provide the services to the American people that they deserve. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. And now we'll move into the question period. I think each member has the list in front of them, but I'll call on you as we move forward. I want to start by thanking all of you for being here, for your incredibly hard work and for your courage, because it takes courage to, especially for those of you that, like Mr. Choi, are still employed by the federal government, and Mr. Osadebe, I mean, really, your strength and character are remarkable, and thank you for the incredibly important reminder for all of us that we have to stand firm on top of the principles and foundation that this country was founded on. So I serve when Congress is actually in session and the appropriations process isn't horrifically broken by our friends on the other side of the aisle, I'm the ranking member of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Subcommittee. It's the only committee in the Congress, of which we're very proud, that is responsible for the entire life cycle of an individual upon their entrance to military services on active duty, all the way through their time as a veteran and even to their burial. And so it's an incredibly important responsibility, and particularly when it comes to the quality of life of our service members and our veterans and the dignity in which we lay them to rest. I'm obviously disgusted, as many of you are, by the treatment of our nation's veterans, especially the fact that President Trump and his White House have laid off more veterans than any president and administration in history. My question for Mr. Jones and Mr. Choi, I know you're probably already aware that the Urban Institute released a report last month that estimates over 600,000 non-elderly veterans have access to health care through the ACA. But if the tax credits are not extended, more than 260,000 veterans might lose their access to affordable health care coverage because they get their health care in part from the ACA. It is unbelievable. It's breathtaking to me that the administration would allow so many veterans to lose their health care. Can you both talk about what kind of impact widespread loss of health care coverage for our veterans how that would impact your peers?
Yeah, I can go first. Well, thank you for the question, Congresswoman. I'm not aware of many veterans on the ACA. I just assume most veterans get their care at the VA, but I guess there's rules what quantifies a person to be able to get that care at the VA based on a disability. But if these vets are on the ACA and they lose their health care, then if they're not eligible to get care at the VA, it's going to be devastating for these veterans. They can't afford to pay the increased premium starting January 1st. I'm fortunate that I use the VA. I qualify for care at the VA. So, but even that care has diminished since this administration came into power.
How so?
Back in January. Delays in getting appointments are longer. My mental health appointments used to be an hour long each session. Now it's down to 30 minutes. Because of the increased folks that are coming into the system. And my counselor used to work at home. They moved him back into an office that he has to share with 2 other people to do these mental health appointments. So it's making it extremely tough to schedule these appointments when there's not enough office space at the clinic that I go to.
Wait, are you having your mental health care appointments with your counselor with other people in the room?
No, ma'am. It's he has to share an office with 2 other folks.
Okay.
And so I'm sure that's what causes some of the backlog too, because there's not enough space, office space, or rooms in the clinic to provide all this care. As far as being confidential and whatnot.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've seen delays there, and then the disability claims. I know a person that files she's a person that examines VA claims, a rater basically, and so there's been a huge influx of claims, and they've lost people that do that type of work that rate VA disability claims, so it takes longer now to get an answer. I mean, it's always been several months, but now it's even longer. I think it's up to 6 months or longer.
Thank you. Mr. Choi, when you answer, can you also, I know you were a Marine Corps veteran, and I wanted you to just kind of cover, with veterans facing their such financial uncertainty, if you can comment on what the administration is doing, but also answering the other question.
I'll start with the earlier question regarding the Affordable Care Act marketplace plans. So like James, I'm not familiar with anyone that specifically has those, but thinking about the situation, we can expect that folks that do not have health insurance coverage or choose not to because of the ridiculous premium and deductibles and being unable to pay for it would most likely get their care through emergency care, and most likely will have delays of care. So for folks with chronic disease, folks that have certain disabling conditions that they would not be able to necessarily get support at the VA, would find other ways to get that resource, typically through emergency care. So this is kind of at the most emergent type of dangerous situation will folks probably have that touch point with healthcare and cause that delays. So that is a...
particularly for veterans, though. I mean, given the needs that they have that are so urgent, and the risk if you're going through PTSD and so many other complexities, if you have the ACA even as a supplement to coverage at the VA, what kind of impact disproportionately would that have on veterans?
I can't say for sure, but I can see impacts in getting access to behavioral health, for example. Like if you were using, if your disability rating didn't cover all the full range of services, you would use the ACA to supplement your services. That may be some of those type of services that would get delayed or may have to be paid out of pocket, which causes issues for folks having access to those services. For the second question regarding some of the financial difficulties, I know a lot of employees that are also veterans that are furloughed, for example, are just dealing with a combination of both the difficulty in having the additional side income, right? So like having the ability to, because in this furlough situation, you'll have to go through similar procedural things to try to get alternative income source while we're waiting for an additional paycheck. And I think some veterans specifically would have some challenges with that because of the flexibilities are offered as a federal worker. So for example, folks that have certain disabling conditions that cause it really difficulty to do certain jobs, right? So the federal government is one of the bottom employer because it used to have reasonable accommodations to support folks from a broad range of different conditions that may affect how folks would get jobs in the traditional employer. So folks that have these type of conditions may have a harder time looking for these additional income sources during the shutdown.
Thank you very much. Congressman McGovern.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I'm Jim McGovern. I represent the Massachusetts 2nd Congressional District, and I first just want to thank all of you for being here, and I want to thank you for all that you do. And I want to thank you for your courage, and I want to thank you for coming here and putting a human face on what these cuts are all about. Republicans have put us in a pretty shitty situation. I was trying to think of a nicer word, but I couldn't. Trump has said that he was going to fight inflation and lower costs. Instead, Republicans have cut almost $1 trillion, $1 trillion from Medicaid, and $200 billion from SNAP. The average SNAP benefit is a little over $2 per person per meal, and most of the people on the benefit are working people. And that's what they're going after. Yesterday I sent out a message to my constituents asking them to share with me if they had received notices that their health insurance premiums would increase next year. Within the first 20 minutes, I had over 100 responses. People are terrified, and it's already hard enough to afford food and housing, and now people are worried about not being able to afford their health care as well. Donald Trump and his lifestyles of the rich and famous cabinet don't worry about the cost of health care. They have concierge health care. These things don't ever enter in their thought process. But for the people I represent, and for those of you here, and for the people that you're also speaking on behalf of, this is a huge deal. And as was pointed out, we could find $40 billion to bail out this right-wing cuckoo clock in Argentina, but we can't find the resources to make sure people don't see their health care premiums double? I don't get that. I mean, if you think helping that crazy man in Argentina is more important than people in this country, then we don't share the same values. And I'm also deeply concerned about the corruption. So much, millions and millions and millions of dollars going to enrich this president, his kids, his family members, and the people in his cabinet. I mean, it makes me nostalgic for Richard Nixon. That's how bad it is. I mean, for years I've said that Donald Trump is the most corrupt U.S. president in recent history. But after these last few months, I want to amend that statement and remove the word recent. I mean, this is unbelievable. And I just have a couple of questions. I'll begin with you, Mr. Shriver. I want to ask you how this administration's hostility toward federal workers has impacted interest and enthusiasm about continuing or starting civil service careers. And I also, want to point out, and you can elaborate on this, that this is not just about federal workers, right? It's about the services they provide, people all throughout this country. These are not Democrat or Republican workers. These are workers who work for the American people.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. As the former acting director of OPM, I'm so proud of these federal workers up here and the bravery that they're showing and what they're showing the American people about who a federal worker really is. I talk to federal workers all the time who are going through the worst moments of their careers. And to a person, they always start with, who's going to take care of the job that I was doing? Their concern is always about the American people that they're helping before they talk about their own personal circumstances. People who work for the federal government are very committed to the mission, and we just saw 154,000 federal workers leave under the deferred resignation program. Over 2 million years of experience walked out the door on September 30th. And what I have to say about that is it must have been pretty awful for them to do that. It must have been terrible because federal workers don't want to leave those jobs that they work so hard to get because of the impact they can make. I'm incredibly concerned about the impact of these policies on younger people wanting to come and work for the government, on skilled people, AI experts, the kind of talent that the federal government needs in order to keep up with the challenges of modern day life. The government was recruiting young people, recruiting tech talent, recruiting AI talent. They were, for the most part, probationary employees at the beginning of the Trump administration, and they were summarily terminated without cause just because the Trump administration thought they could do that. What message does that send to young people, to tech talent, to the greatest AI minds in the country? We're telling you on the one hand, we want you to come and work for us, and on the other hand, we're letting you go with no good reason at all. The government has had historic challenges in recruiting young people and recruiting tech talent, and what this administration is doing is turning it into a workforce that doesn't try to recruit the best and the brightest, but that tries to recruit the most loyal.
And as Mr. Jones pointed out with regard to the VA, I mean, how do you get people to want to come to work for the VA when you're being told that they're about to lay off a whole bunch of workers, right? I mean, people want some stability, but people also want some respect. People deserve respect. I mean, our federal employees do everything from helping our veterans to helping protect our national parks to providing people Social Security, right down the list. And I'm sick and tired of the demonization of our federal workforce and the attack on federal unions as well. I just have one other quick question, and that is to Ms. Latham. Medicaid and the Department of Education support individuals with disabilities through adulthood. And how have you envisioned these services would assist Calvin as he gets older? And if these services are destroyed, what might Calvin be inhibited from doing or achieving in his life?
Thank you for the question. That is one of our biggest concerns, is how the implications of this bill will resonate throughout his life. We live in Virginia, where there is a significant wait list for wraparound supports for people with disabilities. So we only have a supplement of the Medicaid waiver because we are one of over 14,000 people on that wait list. We don't know when he will be available for the additional Medicaid services. So understanding that that will likely affect the length of time that we will be on that wait list will go well into his adulthood. They're already telling us that it will be into his adulthood. And we meet families all the time who have adult children who they may be in their 70s or 80s, and they tell people all the time, I'm afraid to die because I don't know what's going to happen to my child, because they're already not receiving the services that they should be. So programs to help support Calvin in the future for college are being cut. We're seeing cuts at the federal level for housing and human services that will help support him in his day-to-day as he becomes an adult. And we would hope to live independently as he can with supports, but with the increase of attacks on his education, the supports of his education, the supports for his teachers, that will have a lasting impact on his life and people like him.
I heard similar. I did a town hall in Worcester, where I live, and I heard similar concerns from parents whose kids
Mr.
needed
McGovern.
these services. But I'll yield back.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Congressman Tonko.
Okay. Yeah, it's on now. Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman. I represent the Capital Region in New York, the Albany, New York area, and just impacted by so many of the cuts that our constituents are raising their voices, very, very concerned. And Donald Trump and his GOP allies are purposefully making this shutdown as painful as possible for the American people. They have made it no secret that they are attempting to entirely eliminate federal agencies. Seems to be their underlying goal. And the Department of Education is one of their top targets. This is illegal. The president cannot eliminate entire federal agencies without approval from Congress, but they continue to go forward with this agenda. He attempted to illegally fire thousands of federal workers, something that no previous president has done during a shutdown. These cuts are unnecessary. Trump has proposed steep funding cuts across the federal government, including the Department of Education, which would have a devastating impact on our children and our communities. In fact, compared to this time last year, the Department of Education has been reduced by more than one-half, as thousands of staff have either departed or been fired. This has been going on since day one of this administration. Now he's using the shutdown that he caused to go even deeper. In the most recent rounds of cuts, 466 employees were fired at the Department of Education. That was a fifth of the remaining staff at the agency. These firings affected those who oversee Title I grant funding, which is designated for low-income schools, the Office for Civil Rights, the management of the 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which facilitate summer and after-school learning programs. There are 3 employees left at the Office of Special Education Programs. 3. That's 3 employees left at the office that oversees more than $15 billion worth in funding under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, and ensures that students with disabilities are receiving the same opportunities as their peers. 3 people. Who is going to answer the call when a family is desperately trying to get the resources that are necessary for their child? Who is going to look after the promise that children of different abilities in this country are supposed to be guaranteed the same opportunity as their peers? Who is going to assist every school in the nation with this monumental task? That seems like a pretty big task for just 3 people. We must confront the reality that when we cut education, we cut opportunity, we cut innovation, we cut our nation's future. Depriving students of resources today increases the risk of leaving behind an entire generation of students who are unable to reach their full potential. The Trump administration does not have to do this. They are deliberately choosing to inflict as much pain on the American people as possible. Families across our country are now getting hit on multiple fronts. First, the Republicans' big, ugly bill made the largest cut to Medicaid in history while refusing to extend tax credits that make health care affordable for millions more. Now they're gutting access to special ed and resources that millions of schools and families rely upon all across our great nation. Lindsay, I heard your responses to my colleague, Representative McGovern. But are there other things you would tell us about in terms of the devastating cuts, what they mean to your family, what they mean to Calvin, what they mean to families like yours?
In the state of Virginia, as I mentioned in my remarks, the JLARC study showed that there were instances, vast instances across the Department of Education in Virginia where they found that students were denied a free and appropriate public education. In those situations, they are supposed to be given compensatory services to be made whole. What the study found is that VDOE does not follow up to ensure that those compensatory hours are being met and that those children are made whole. So our next step would be to go to the Office of Civil Rights, which is no longer available. So the backstop for families like mine is there is none. We just don't have a voice now to help support these students who are being denied access to an appropriate education. And if this is the trend in Virginia with the budget that we have, I can't imagine what that looks like in states like Alabama or Louisiana, where they are also, disability doesn't discriminate. Everyone will have disability in their life at some point. It is not partisan, it is not a party. Disability will touch every single person, and it can happen at any single time. So there are people who are really going to suffer. There are children who are very much going to suffer, and there are teachers. The teachers need our support. Special education is the most critical area where we have a deficit in teachers. And the resources that come out of OSIP to help support those teachers are no longer available. So we're making it harder for people to enter the profession. And that's very scary.
Well, thank you to the panel for being in this fight, each and every one of you. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. I want to also thank our witnesses for being here today. Your testimonies are so very powerful, and they highlight the harm that this Republican shutdown is having on the American people, whether it's our children in special education. I had an honor of representing kids for their IEPs for a year and doing that work, and know how important it is to have advocates there and to make sure the services are there. And Mr. Jones, your comment about keeping the promise to our veterans is so very important, that we keep in mind that we continue to fight for our veterans and our federal workers. So thank you all. I want to also say it's been really disappointing that as these harmful impacts are happening to federal workers and people across the country, that our Republican colleagues have just stood by in silence. Just stood by in silence as this has happened. And so we're going to continue to fight for everything from collective bargaining to health care to our federal workers. So thank you all for being here. Mr. Asadabi, I just want to thank you for your powerful testimony and highlighting what's happening. The American people need to know what is happening at HUD and the rollback of what I see as civil rights enforcements and programs. And you said it so eloquently, you know, what people fought and the blood, sweat, and tears for. So my question is to you. I serve as a co-chair of the Congressional Caucus on Homelessness. I work with my colleagues on legislation and policies to ensure everyone has a safe place to call home. And the Trump administration has, you know, threatened to use this shutdown to attack programs it doesn't like, some of which you've mentioned and you've spoken about. He's already made cuts to funding and to staff, people like you who are willing to speak out, and that this is going to really impact programs and make sure there's equal access to housing. Do you see these moves by the administration and the current HUD leadership during the shutdown as part of a plan to undermine the long-term enforcement of civil rights protections for housing?
Thank you for the question. It's hard to see it any other way. We actually did try to give them the benefit of the doubt at the start of the administration. They won the election. They have the right to set priorities, to take things in a different direction. But what we've seen is the removal of any capacity to do this work at all. We've seen disrespect for anyone who does the work, getting emails telling us that we're basically useless and would be more efficient in the private sector, firing the people who do the work, putting restrictions on the work. I'm not sure what other way to interpret that. Maybe we should ask Secretary Turner. We've put out an ask to have a hearing with him. He should come and explain his plans, explain what he's done already, and we'll see if he can defend it and explain it to you and to the American people. I'm not sure that would be very successful, but we should do that. I think it'd be very interesting. Our ability to do our work has been, shredded systematically. When you go from the beginning intake process, reducing the ways that people can file complaints, you get rid of the investigators, you get rid of the people who could prosecute the claims, you get rid of the ability to send the claims somewhere else, you get rid of the fair housing organizations that were required to fund by law, you get rid of the state organizations that are required to enforce people's rights. I'm not sure what they expect people to do to have their rights protected. It seems like they're much more concerned about defending the rights of landlords and banks and developers and the people who already have quite enough in this country and are much less concerned with, and they were asking for help to how to get a woman who is currently homeless, how to get her housing authority to actually give her housing back because she lost it due to a stalker who physically assaulted her and she had to flee. And it's my job to help that person. Everything that they could do to stop me from doing that, they have done, including walking me out of the building for telling you that they're doing that. So that's the situation. And it's a critical situation. We need to do something about it.
Well, thank you. I apologize for how you and federal workers have been disrespected, not valued. And that's, one of the things Democrats are here to do. It's to stand up and stand with our federal workers, making sure that there's ability to have oversight, as you mentioned, bringing in the secretary, asking questions. That's all going to be very critical work for us to continue to push for until we have the ability to have the gavels to call in and do that oversight and call in these witnesses. And we implore our Republican colleagues to do that, to stand up for their constituents, for their federal workers, for everybody, and to have accountability regardless of who is in the White House, and making sure we're continuing to fight for lowering costs and saving health care. So thank you all for your service and for your courage here today. I'm out of time, Mr. Choi. I wanted to ask you a question, but I will have to yield and have an opportunity another time. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I am Congressman Stephen Horsford from Nevada, and I want to thank the co-chairs of the Steering Policy committee and Leader Jeffries for prioritizing this hearing and for centering your voices in this debate about where we are as a country and a Congress and what we have to do going forward. And I want to start by saying you all are the best of America. Not only your service, civilian service, your military service, your commitment and compassion on behalf of your family, but you represent what it is we're fighting for in this moment, and that is the American people. Sadly, it's now a month since Speaker Johnson has opened the doors of Congress. I'm elected to represent 750,000 people from Nevada to do my job, which is to fight on their behalf. And this speaker is impeding my ability to do my job because he's been MIA on a taxpayer-funded vacation for now over a month. September 19th, in fact, was the last time the House of Representatives was in for a vote. Could you imagine not showing up to your job for a month? No notice, walking out, no plan, and just saying, I'll come back when I feel like it? That's essentially what this speaker has done. He's shown no respect for the American people or this body. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, you are the Speaker of the House, not the Speaker of the Republican Party. And so I'm calling on him to bring back his conference and to open the doors of Congress so that we can do our job, which is to meet in a bipartisan way, to debate, to argue, to reach bipartisan agreement, to reopen government, and to fund essential services, including health care. And I also want to thank each of you for centering this issue of civil rights and how housing and education and health care are fundamental civil rights, because that is something that I think has been missed in the attack and the assault that's happening by this administration. Mr. Jones and Mr. Choi, I want to say thank you for your continued service to this great nation. Not only have you served in uniform, but you've continued to serve as civil servants. And that commitment does not go unnoticed, and everyone here is grateful for that service. And we know that a high percentage of our federal workers are veterans who have chosen to continue their service through civil servants. So I just want to ask each of you how this government shutdown has impacted you personally and those of your furloughed workers, your peers, if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
I think of two pieces to how the shutdown has impacted me, but this has kind of been a continuation of how I felt since the beginning of this year with the different changes going on. One is uncertainty, not knowing how my job or my role will be affected because of political targeting, because of a lot of rhetoric around having to show loyalty. A second one is focused around moral injury, right? So as someone who has dedicated a big part of time to study health policy, think about how to best think about health insurance policy and how to support different communities, having the idea that talking about health equity is something that's not allowed in the workplace. Seeing folks that are focused on Office of Minority Health getting shuttered in their work around health equity or how to think about people with unmet needs, how we can no longer do that in our workplace, right? So those two pieces, I think, are centerpieces of how I feel. During the shutdown, specifically around this issue around health premium increases for the Affordable Care Act plan, I see my colleagues across the different centers in which their work is focused on this and seeing how they must be struggling with how do they balance that with their own personal principles and the moral injury they must feel. I also see colleagues in Medicaid working on the work, implementing the different things that are implemented to the bill and how they must feel, knowing that it would not have that positive impact around employment, but may cause issues with folks getting uninsured. Folks that have this, what we call lumpy income, right? So they're self-employed, they're contractors, don't necessarily work a certain amount of hours, or how the paperwork may cause them to lose insurance, may lead to, if they have a chronic illness, may lead them to get even sicker, may lead to unnecessary harm and suffering. So I think those two feelings would sum up how I feel.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Congressman, on a personal level, like most people, I have a mortgage. I have two boys. One's 15, one's 10. My 15-year-old, he can eat $200 worth of groceries in 2 days. So
they're expensive.
Yeah. So, and as you know, groceries, they haven't gone down as promised by this administration. In fact, they've gone up. All you have to do is go to the grocery store and, drop $300, and you can almost carry it out in two hands. So, yeah, while we're furloughed, obviously, we're not getting paid. So, yeah, it's having an impact on my family, obviously, and many other federal employees. I'm lucky in the regard that my wife, she has a great job. She makes decent income, and we have savings. So we're able to weather the storm, I guess, for a while. We have to tighten the belt. We've been very frugal on what we spend, but I have friends in the Park Service and other federal agencies that aren't as fortunate as me. And so they're very concerned, if they miss a mortgage payment or the rent payment, are they going to be kicked out? Are they going to have their home foreclosed on, or the landlord's going to kick them out if they can't pay their utility bills?
Right.
They turn their power off, their internet off. So these are real world problems that a lot of people are facing as federal employees. And the longer this goes on, obviously it's going to get worse. So I'm hoping your Republican colleagues will come back and do their job so we can do our job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here. During this administration and the attacks on everything from people's health care to civil rights to freedom of press to freedom of our universities, there's been two responses. One is sort of to cower in fear, and the other one is to stand up. And especially for all of you who are federal employees, thank you for the courage that it takes you to stand up. Because without people like you, the American public really cannot understand the vastness of the attacks on everything from healthcare to our basic civil liberties. And so I appreciate all of you being here. My mom used to always say to me, you don't need to listen to what people say, you need to watch what they do. And that tells you what their priorities are and what they value. And, I sort of, we're now in day 33, and we haven't had a gavel. We haven't seen our Republican colleagues here. Mike Johnson has not gavelled in the House of Representatives. But let's contrast that to July 2nd, when we were all back in our districts, getting ready for the 4th of July holiday, doing our work in our districts, and we were all rushed back here, and he gavelled in, and we passed the biggest attack on middle-class Americans in Medicaid and SNAP benefits in history. The passage of this big bill, I don't call it beautiful, I have another B word for that, that really ripped health care away from 15 million Americans. Also, they could go and give tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans. And so it's sort of in this backdrop that we're here today, having this hearing. I keep thinking about the tearing down of the east wing of the White House so that Donald Trump can build a $250 million ballroom while federal employees are being forced to skip their paychecks, being forced to, Congressman Horsford and I met with many of federal employees back in our district don't even know how they can afford to get gas so they can even turn up for work that they're not getting paid for. And so it's just really the discrepancy in priorities is just astonishing to me. And, you know, what we heard from the federal employees that we talked to was this is just a continuation of everything they've been under from the get-go, from the very beginning with the Doge cuts to, you know, having to write your 5 things you accomplished in the week, to seeing the firings and the disregard for family leave, and now the executive order attacking basic collective bargaining. And so my question I'm going to ask Mr. Shriver, Mr. Jones, Mr. Ozadibi, and Mr. Choi. You know, what I've noticed with this administration is they try to achieve their priorities by attacking the people who implement our laws. And so, you know, it's a sinister attempt, whether you're talking about the rollbacks to the Department of Special Ed. Now, these are the individuals that make sure that the decades-long promise from Congress that, you know, that ensures that disabled students receive free and appropriate education and protects the civil, you know, the civil liberties. Or you see the Bureau of Land Management rolled back, Park Service rolled back, the VA rolling back the benefits. And so my question in HUD, seeing the rollback of protections, is just very quickly, because I'm running out of time, can you tell us what, when employees get cuts and when these attacks on employees happen, what does that mean for the ability to deliver the services that you're called to do?
It's devastating, Congresswoman. It's devastating. And I don't think the American people quite understand the far reach of the services that the federal government provides day to day. And I don't think this administration gets it at all. I don't think they had any plan for how they were going to continue delivering services when they did these cuts. So we might be talking about wildland firefighters. We might be talking about safety inspectors that go into meat and poultry plants and make sure that our food is safe. We might be talking about nurses at the VA. The largest occupation in government is nurses who serve our veterans in VA facilities. We might be talking about people that handle customer service on benefits programs like Social Security. What are you going to do when the people that answer those questions are no longer there and somebody needs their check? It goes on and on, the kinds of services that the American people depend on every day that can't be performed like this.
Thank you. Just quickly, one example from the VA.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Yeah, the VA, obviously, if the staff is cut, it hinders the ability to provide care to veterans. That's overhead staff, and that's where they're targeting a lot of that, of those cuts. But there's also not doctors and nurses that are leaving as well. And so the fewer staff, the fewer medical staff that are there, obviously, it's affecting our care. Mm-hmm. Longer wait times to get an appointment, longer times to get an answer on a disability claim.
Thank you.
So without the investigators and attorneys that actually enforce the civil rights laws, the laws are just on paper. They're not a reality for people. There's nothing you can hold on to actually make your landlord treat you with respect, or make your bank not overcharge you, or just ban you from getting a mortgage in the first place. And it gives companies, landlords, governments too, gives them the thought in their head that I can do whatever I want because no one's watching me. The government's not going to do anything. They're on my side. I'm going to just I'm going to go ahead and overcharge that person. I'm going to kick out that domestic violence survivor because I just don't want to deal with this. That disabled veteran who needs a ramp to get into the building, I'm just not going to build it. They can deal with it themselves. That's what it means. And that's anywhere you live in this country, whoever you voted for, none of that matters when you don't have your rights and no one to enforce them. You just don't have them.
Thank you. one more. Sorry, I'm way over my time. But
I'll speak to the, so about 300 or so folks from CMS, the agency I work at, were fired really early around March. Some of them are part of the Office of Civil Rights, right? They process a reasonable accommodation claims for workers that have different conditions that cause it very difficult to work in a certain way. So you have reasonable accommodations to help them for accessibility. When those people are cut, it impairs how new employees or current employees may interact with the workforce. Some of them leave because they're no longer able to do the job that they do without these reasonable accommodations. This also impacts folks that have their parents that need specific accommodations to handle balanced childcare or supporting their elderly parents and various other conditions which make it more difficult for a worker to do their job. So the federal government had this reasonable accommodation contract to support workers across different needs and different ways in which they need to have support in order to do their job. When CMS cuts that, it reduces how folks may be able to stay working at the agency, and many folks did leave and have issues to this day. When that office got cut, all those claims got put into the main Department of Health and Human Services. I've had colleagues from CDC that still have backlogs of reasonable accommodations that were never addressed, starting from earlier this year. So this is a big concern and way in which administratively we make it difficult for workers to do their job and to support all the different needs that they have as a person.
yeah, I mean, the basic theme is our most vulnerable in our country are at risk and their rights are being ripped away. And at the same time, while the wealthiest Americans are enjoying the largest tax break in history. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleagues, and certainly to you being here as witnesses. Madam Chair was updating me. I was in another hearing earlier, but I guess I have a question to ask you that centers more about what you can tell us we should be doing more, because that's the way the questions are coming in. How is the shutdown going to affect my contract as a contractor worker? Or with veteran services? We get a lot of calls from veterans with CMS. What are some of the things? So let's take, we know healthcare is the big crisis. And I think we understand that because we've been dealing with that, and our message has been so clear about being able to save our health care, cut the costs, and that. But how are federal rental assistance programs affected by the shutdown? And I know you work with HUD.
So, I mean, during the shutdown, things like that, those are Democrat agency things. So those are not happening right now, of course. And I'm not sure that those will be come back after the shutdown. So those are the stakes right now. This is kind of a final attack on all the things that help working people, things that aren't just like a weapon, a tool to use against political enemies or people who don't vote for you, or just things that don't enrich certain people. Everything that doesn't fit into that category is what's under attack right now, and that definitely includes rental assistance, because when people don't have that assistance, they're forced to move in with family or live out of their car or get into huge credit card debt. It affects their education, it affects their jobs, it affects so many different things. And that's why I think it's really important that Congress stands up, like the risk level that I'm taking right now, being here talking to you, and as I've been over the last several months, that's what we want to see from Congress. Okay. Understanding the stakes, understanding that they are attempting to come for it all right now. And it needs to be Congress understanding that and acting accordingly. So that means working with federal unions, because we are the workers in the building who can tell you what's happening, and it's going to be the union people who speak up. So got to make sure that the unions are still there, and got to make sure that the people who do speak out have protection and amplification for whatever's happening.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I have a few minutes left. Let me ask anyone, especially those who are veterans, What impact to the VA healthcare facilities are they facing prior to and during the shutdown? For example, are there staffing, supply, or medication delivery issues?
I can take that, Congresswoman. Yeah. So, my local, we represent VA workers in Asheville, North Carolina, and they have lost quite a few folks since January 20th, mainly due to the deferred resignation program and voluntary retirements, and it has affected care there. It's a lot of the folks that restocked medical supplies, they were let go. They were brought back, I think, and then they were let go again from all the confusion and chaos. So it's definitely had an effect on the employees, the employees that are still there, because a lot of the medical staff have to do that work now. So instead of providing care to veterans, they're running around and restocking shelves and moving things around and doing, I guess, some of the administrative work, I've been told.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a very helpful, and let me just say we hear you in that bringing individuals on and the risks you're taking as the risk when we go live and in the hearings, and we say the same thing that you were saying. We call them out. We say they are on vacation and not here, and we're here, and those who are in the districts, we're touring those facilities, trying to talk to those same employees to give them the reassurance that we will stand with them. But I think this is also helpful information to us that we should do a panel, and we bring a panel of union workers from across, so they hear what we're hearing from you and what more they can do to make sure that those workers are protected, so they don't get fired, or they don't get fired, rehired, only to be told that they're being displaced again. But let me just say, for the input, for the information, for your courage, for you standing up, not for yourself, but for American people, and for those who have served our country, those who might have a disability, those who are dependent in their life literally counts on these services or medication. I certainly say thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Beatty. I just want to thank all of you for being here. As the co-chair of Steering and Policy, I think I only missed one hearing in California. And every time I think I've heard it all, you reminded me today, I have not heard it all. And I'm angry, I'm appalled. It sounds like we know what they want to do at the Department of Education. I don't think they want one. And I think they want to privatize VA and HUD. From what you reported back, they just don't want HUD. And I could think of, I represent the Chicagoland area, but I go way south I'm urban, suburban, and rural. And when I think about the helicopter that landed on the building, ICE landed, that was my district. That building, even before they landed, it was so jacked up, excuse my terminology, but just so messed up. And you could see in so many places how HUD is so needed, and they want to tear it apart because they just don't care. And I just want to thank Democracy Forward for all of your work. Even before he was sworn in, you guys were on top of so many things, and that's why we could jump on things so fast. So just thank all of you for being here. As you've heard from my colleagues, we are with you. We stand with you. We're fighting with one arm behind our back, so we're going to fight till this one falls off, and we're going to start kicking. We just need y'all to kick with us. So just hang in there. We are going to get through this. And as you know, we're in the 22nd day of the Republican-led government shutdown. Federal workers, as you've reported, are missing paychecks. And as we've heard, there have been furloughed workers, there are fired workers. People are worried that Trump is going to withhold their pay. And so, but let's be clear, the law signed by Donald Trump, I think he forgot, himself in 2019 guarantees that both essential and furloughed workers are paid. This is happening because Republicans do not want to make health care more affordable. They want to let the ACA premium tax credits expire, increase your monthly health bill, and give, as you've heard, Argentinian billionaires a $40 billion bailout. I have a brief story from my constituents. Yesterday, one of my staffers met with 2 small business owners from my district who are pleading to make health care more affordable. One of them sells has several coffee shops and worries about her own employees being able to afford health care. Healthcare is a large expense for a small business and its employees. I came from a mom and pop grocery store. The ACA premium tax credits provide affordable care to this coffee shop's employees. The other constituent owns a wine production business that sells nationwide. Despite her successful business, access to a plan that allows her to see her primary care doctor is so expensive. She is reliant on her husband for health care. Like you talked about your wife and her salary. This is unacceptable. These are stories of hardworking Americans, job creators trying to access health care for themselves and their employees. Should not be that difficult. Republicans love to say, get a job if you want health care. They also love to say we need to support our job creators. So let's do that. Let's extend the ACA premium tax credits. Let's make health care more affordable and accessible, and let's reopen this government sooner than later. Thank you all so very much again, and I adjourn this hearing.
and ATF officials, shutters offices that prevent community violence, and dismantle drug trafficking operations. purges the attorneys who enforce the laws that protect the environment, and shifts highly trained special agents away from counterintelligence and counterterrorism. And it cannot protect civil rights when it drives out 75% of the attorneys from the Civil Rights Division and refuses to enforce the nation's civil rights laws as Congress intended, using them instead as a cudgel against marginalized groups. The administration is taking a sledgehammer to other long-standing work the department has done to protect communities and the rule of law. Its plans to eliminate the tax division, which saves the country billions of dollars by pursuing tax evaders, will lead us poorer. Gutting the public integrity section and FBI public corruption squads has paved the way for government graft. Canceling hundreds of millions of dollars in grants has left at-risk communities less protected and crime victims less supported. The list could go on.
Celebrate a ceasefire, that we can pronounce that a number of member states recognize the two-state, that the job's done. The job is very much not done. The job is starting 2 weeks ago. It's going to be a long job. And for the last 2 years, many countries, nations, people have been saying, well, what can I do? I want to do something. Now's the time.
Yeah. I have a second question, follow-up. Recently, there was a meeting in the Security Council, and this and a Palestinian eloquent speaker, her name is Noura Arikat, mentioned a lot of information about the Israeli intention to decapitate the Palestinian generation. She said, and tell me that is, there is one reproductive health clinic in Gaza. And she gave the numbers of those canisters which has sperms and eggs and for reproduction. And it was intentionally destroyed. She made her conclude to the Security Council that is part of the Israeli intention to destroy the Palestinian population in general. What information you have about this clinic which has been destroyed, if you may have information?
The specific example and the specific speaker you refer to, I have to plead ignorance. Sorry, that's not to avoid the question. Similarly, I can't, on the basis of what I saw in that short time, really give you a definitive response to your question. What I can say is the vast majority of hospitals and medical facilities and clinics in Gaza are destroyed. Okay, well, that figure I spoke to earlier, 94% of hospitals, for example, being destroyed. And we can give you statistics of what are actually open now. We can also provide those statistics. It's single digits in terms of hospitals. But even of those, 94% are destroyed or damaged. Sorry, some are damaged and still functional. But of those proportion that are damaged, 50% plus of those are only providing trauma care. They're not providing the specialised care that you would need if you've got a complicated birth, a complicated pregnancy, both of them, and to deal with the issues of both the mother and the newborn. I mean, I have some stats, I think, somewhere. I mean, 15%. Only 15% of those health facilities that are still functioning offer emergency obstetric care. Okay, Most neonatal units are overflowing at about 170% capacity. It's quite common to see 3 to 5 newborns in an incubator at the same time. Premature and low birth weight infants, 70% of newborns. The figure was 20% before October 2023. So you've seen a significant rise, and it also responds to that earlier question: is what does it mean to the new generation? Because these are problems that you can carry through life. So the health. All I can say is the health system is devastated. We need to get in there. We need to look at this recovery effort from the two aspects, which UNFPA and the rest of the humanitarian system is done, which is essentially, yes, we need to get in there as humanitarians and deal with the emergency. But we must also think of the rebuilding, the long-term infrastructure of the health service, which has been effectively completely destroyed.
Thank you. Stefano Vaccara, Ital Press, La Voce di New York. There's been a lot of talking on the possibility to send to Gaza eventually a UN mission similar or even the same of UNIFIL. Basically, UNIFIL has to leave Lebanon and move UNIFIL there. Now, UNIFIL had has been many years in Lebanon, but we saw image and photos of hospitals and blue helmets that were actually women helping other women and the situation in Lebanon wasn't so catastrophic. But my question is, would you have any advices or anything that could help in the case they're building a mission where to make sure that in this UN mission, there is a certain percentage of women to go to Gaza to help other women?
Yeah, I'm probably limited to the extent of my influence on building such a mission, but let me take a bigger response. The vast majority of our staff in Gaza, the ones I met, are women. UNFPA ensures gender parity as a minimum right across its staffing. We specifically, and this is all part of the wider reform of the humanitarian system now, where we are looking towards more localization. I'm talking about humanitarian system generally, not just Gaza, of working more through local agencies, and in particularly local women's-led organizations to help build the response. I mean, I think UNFPA has targeted already 40% of our partners on the ground are women-led, and I think we've targeted 43% in the next strategic planning situation. So we need women's engagement to rebuild, particularly the services that UNFPA has. I would advocate that women. So two things. I would advocate that women are essential for the role that UNFPA. And I can tell you from my experience of 25 years in the UN system, the more women I have in these jobs, the more women I have leading, then the happier I will be that we will provide the solution to women and girls' issues in Gaza and every other place that we're in. Sorry that wasn't specific to your question, but I hope you got the general thing. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks again. I'd like to thank once more Andrew Saberton, the Deputy Executive Director of the UN Population Fund for Management. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
The question then was how Trump would respond. Would an outsider president who considered himself to be under unwarranted assault lash out, as happened in Peru and in Turkey? President Trump exhibited clear authoritarian instincts during his first year in office. In Chapter 4, I'm just reading how the authors are presenting this. In Chapter 4, we presented 3 strategies by which elected authoritarians seek to consolidate power: capture the referees, sideline the key players, rewrite the rules to tilt the playing field against opponents. Trump attempted all 3 of these strategies. President Trump demonstrated striking hostility toward the referees, law enforcement, intelligence, ethics agencies, and the courts. Soon after his inauguration, he sought to ensure that the heads of U.S. intelligence agencies, including the FBI, the CIA,